What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash, here to give you the top 40 wide receivers in NFL fantasy football. We've got the average ADP pulled up here. We're going to go through it one by one and tell you, do we have these guys higher? Do we have them lower? Or do we agree with the consensus across most of these drafts? But before we go any further, fellas, it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. I've had this audio stuck in my head of a Skip Bayless clip. It's got to be his best clip, I think, where he's with Shannon Sharp and he's listing guys that he has above Steph Curry all time. And before he even starts, like, Shannon is looking away from him, like totally shut off from anything he's about to say. And the first name he gives is David Robinson, and then immediately says, "You think not?" like kind of sheepishly. And that clip just kills me because he knows before he's even said the name that the reception is not going to be good. And that the way that line is delivered has been living in my head for the last like week or so. I got David Robinson, you think not? Which probably goes to show how my fantasy football list is going to go. He goes on to say Karl Malone, and then he says Bill Walton, and Shannon says no, like no, and then Skip gets really mad and just starts yelling, "Stop it," as loud as he can. He starts getting mad. I think that's got to be one of the all-time debate show clips. And I can't tell what's funnier is the David Robinson, you think not, or after getting shut down twice, going through with it and giving out your Bill Walton, your Bill Walton pick.
You know,
anyway,
we need to start doing more of that. We need to start getting really
I might take the lead here with my fantasy list, because
you might start instigating some terrors.
You are kind of a wild guy when it comes to fantasy, I have to say. I think you have a tendency to, well, you just are very strong in your convictions, and I think that leads you to putting guys way higher, way low if you believe in them. You don't hedge very much. I think hedging is good for fantasy, like not getting too crazy. I think that you're like, this guy's going to be a baller, and then you put him really high.
Yeah, I think I got some guys like, I think I got some guys like that. I kind of distilled my list down a little bit with some hedging. Like I had my initial top 40, and then I just thought there were probably too many rookies on there. Like David Boston probably doesn't have to be in the top 40, only because he's on the Browns, not because of some perceived lack of skill.
Oh my God.
He's balling in training.
Have you been watching these training camp clips? It's just like Watson looks even worse than he has before.
Watson looks worse than he has before, probably because he's not targeting David Boston. Because I see David Boston clips and the guys balling. But I feel like he's like at wide receiver 60 or something, and we're just doing our top 40. So like putting him at 35 or whatever probably was not necessary. But so it's less, there's a little bit more hedging than like my initial instinct, just because rookie wide receivers, like look at Matthew Golden, they can kind of do whatever.
Sure.
And look at the Browns. Yeah, I mean, the 40th receiver is still pretty dang good. You know, they still get a lot of work, honestly.
Yeah.
Boston could have an awesome rookie season, and you could be like, I'm right. And he could go for 750 yards and like 2 touchdowns and not be like a high receiving guy. And it's like, well, he's still not going to be fantasy relevant for a while. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think it's,
so there's a little bit of hedging. But if he is top 40, I'll
good
be
on film. His PFF grade could be really high. He could be getting open, and then they could just have the worst quarterbacks ever known to man. You know, I saw the tweet talking about Will Levis saying that there are not 32 quarterbacks in the NFL better than him. I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right.
I don't think he's right at all.
You don't think he's right? I mean, there's at least 2 that he's better than in Cleveland.
Starting for Cleveland and being a top 32 quarterback are two different things.
I guess that's fair. But he could probably start for, I think, 3 teams in the NFL right now.
What 3?
Well, maybe 2. Definitely the Browns and definitely the Cardinals.
He's not better than Brissett.
I might rather start him than Brissett, though. At least you have
Well, but then
upside.
Well, if you're starting a guy for upside, that's different from them being a top 32 quarterback, no?
Maybe.
They should just get him. I mean, there's like a million quarterbacks in Tennessee. If he could start in Arizona, they should go get him right now, because why not?
Yeah, definitely should. Definitely should. But let's talk about some wide receivers here. We're going to start at the top of the ADP and work our way down. And no surprise here, and I imagine we'll probably all be in agreement, the consensus wide receiver 1, according to ADP, is Jamar Chase. Out there in Cincinnati.
What?
He's just... What? No! How is it not? How is it not Nico Collins, man? No, I really think, and we've talked about the AFC North now, the one thing that keeps you coming back to Cincinnati is, you know, these receivers and Joe Burrow, and they throw the ball a ton. That's why you see both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins pretty high in these fantasy football drafts, but Jamar specifically being arguably the best deep threat in the NFL and arguably the best after the catch threat in the NFL makes him really, really tough. He's going to get a lot of yards. He's going to get a lot of touchdowns. He's going to get a lot of targets point blank. So he's just really hard to, even if they didn't have Burrow and for some reason Flacco had to come in, you would feel pretty good about Jamar Chase being one of the best fantasy receivers in football. So he's my fantasy wide receiver 1. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
He is, but it's close. Puka is right there with him, to be honest with you, who's also in a really good situation. I know that the Rams have a great defense, but they still throw the ball a lot, so it doesn't really matter. And Puka gets a lot of easy work. You know, he can get work in the end zone. I mean, there's no part of his game that's an issue. I mean, okay, let's be real. Like, there's 4 tier 1 receivers to me, just in terms of talent, not in terms of fantasy. That's Jamar, it's Puka, it's JSN, and it's Justin Jefferson. The 2 guys who are also in good fantasy situations are Chase and Puka. You probably feel like Chase is a little bit more reliable in terms of his health, so you have him at 1, but Puka also hasn't missed like a ton of time or anything anyway, so it would be pretty easy to say, like, screw that, I'm a Rams fan, I'm going Puka 1, or I don't know, I don't trust Burrow to stay healthy. And maybe it doesn't mean that Chase is a wash all of a sudden, like is the case. Maybe with some other receivers that we'll get to later. But it would mean that it makes it harder to be quarterback or wide receiver 1. Absolutely, it does. So I think Puka and Chase are right there up at the top. And I guess I'm saying there's a conversation to be had while still picking Chase.
There is a conversation to be had, and Puka is the consensus number 2. Those 2 are pretty close behind each other in the real-time ADP. JSN is right there after him, though, which I might end up disagreeing with, but we'll get to that later. Theo, how do you feel about Chase at 1?
Oh, yeah, I've got Chase at 1, and I think the stat that says it all is 12 touchdowns per 17 games in his career. And Puka's at 7 touchdowns per 17 games. I mean, Chase is just the premier touchdown scorer, basically, in the NFL. When they get to the red zone, I think they're way more likely to target Chase than, like, pound it in with a QB sneak or Blake Corum or Kyron Williams or something like that. It's Chase just, I think he's got a longer range to score a touchdown, and they're more reliant on him in the red zone. So I've got him at number 1, Puka at number 2, JSN at number 3. That's how I've got it stacked at the top.
Oh. Okay. Puka is interesting. Matt, you brought up like Joe Burrow could get hurt, and maybe that's something you're worried about. You got to be a little worried about Stafford too. Like he's getting true. Up there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of risk everywhere, so I just stuck with Chase at 1. But again, like depending on, maybe you feel like Stafford's injury issues are overstated because he's played a lot in the last 3 years. Maybe you feel like that you're low on the Bengals defense, so you think that they're going to be passing as much as ever. That'd be fair too. I don't feel super strongly about any one indicator that would make me say Puka over Chase. So I'm just taking the guy who's played a little bit more because I think they're about bang even. I mean, the last time Burrow was healthy, Chase wins the Triple Crown. That's pretty good for fantasy. So that's those two are in a top tier by like a pretty significant margin, I would say.
Yes. Yeah, I think I agree. Where I disagree, Theo, is with you having JSN as wide receiver 3. Matt, I don't know where you have JSN.
I have him as wide receiver 3, but I think there's a lot more debate about where he's ranked. Not because of how good he is, obviously, like super high end, like best route runner in the NFL to me. He's small, but he probably doesn't get as much credit for, his ability to play physically and work through contact and be a guy who I think you can get it to all the time. He's not quite the level of Puka or Chase in that regard, but he's not bad at it at all. He's very capable in those aspects. He's a little bit more well-rounded than people think. What scares me about JSN, though, is the volume of the offense, right? They pass at an incredibly low rate. And while it worked out well for him last year, there was a little bit of keying in on him later in the season that limited his production, even if he was still very impactful. And with, a new offensive coordinator, who's to say that the sequencing isn't worse, and maybe, an offense that really wasn't that strong at running it, but was built all around like bringing guys in, into the box and then giving JSN these great one-on-ones. Maybe if they're not as strong at that, potentially, that you could see the Seattle offense kind of falter and therefore JSN falter, right? I think they're probably going to be fine. And I also think that JSN is a tier 1 receiver coming off a crazy year. So I value how good players are a lot, but there are more questions about the fantasy situation in Seattle than there are in LA or in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at like fantasy situation, Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of sticks out as maybe even being the clear wide receiver 3 for me. Theo, you talk about, guys averaging just a high volume of touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown's had over 10 touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons. And even in like a quote down offensive season for the Lions, which like they were still a very good offense. He still had 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. Like I do feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown is as reliable as a volume producing guy in the NFL right now. And for him he's consensus ADP at 4. I think he's the pretty clear number 3 for me, just based on like the reliability and the consistency that he's been able to produce. And he's also a very good route runner and is able to be a security blanket and score a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. Like, I do think he has a lot to his game, just like JSN. He's not quite as good as the Emerald City route artist is, but I do think he's
not the level of downfield threat that JSN is. And JSN has a much higher ceiling in that regard. Even in a low volume offense, he still went for, 1,800 yards last season. So the reason why Amon-Ra is sticking at 4, even though he's very consistent, is because the question is like, could he push to be wide receiver 1? For the answer with Puka and Chase and JSN, definitely yes, they could. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's not impossible. It's just the path would more be like, you need the Lions defense to be really bad, and you need the Lions to throw a ton, which I don't hate. I don't love how the secondary is shaping up in Detroit. So I really do like Amon-Ra, but even then, like, he's been great. He had 162 targets last year. And he's been consistent, wide receiver 4, 3, 4 over the last 3 seasons. But to push to 1, I just don't know what would have to happen. It's a little hard to imagine, other than like maybe this is just your year where like the Lions have to throw the most in the NFL or something, which would be a very like high end outcome for the secondary issues helping out the passing offense in a fantasy football scenario, right? Or like maybe this is a year where he has like his best possible like red zone outcomes and he gets like 17 touchdowns or something ridiculous. And we're like, that's the year he really went crazy. But you could also say that for just about any guy on this list. But that is usually how you get a wide receiver one season in general. Most dudes need that path, and that's why, for running backs or receivers or any position, really, it's just tough to repeat as the one all the time. I guess that's not true for tight end and quarterback, but for running back and wide receiver, it is.
Yeah. That is true. Like, having the potential for JSN to like do what he did last year would be the reason to put him at number 3. But I really am worried about a change in offensive coordinator. We've seen in multiple recent years that have a negative impact on these offenses. It's really hard to have that brain drain and continue to produce at the same level that you were. Maybe they do end up just throwing more in their new offense, but I feel like a lot of times the answer ends up being, we're not going to change things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They drafted a running back in the first round. It feels like they do want to sort of keep some similarities with the way they were running things last year.
Yeah. Well, Amon-Ra also had all that happen to him. He lost Ben Johnson. And
he did.
He has a running back that's super sick.
That's super sick, and they don't throw the ball. I mean, they throw the ball decent.
Yeah, no, they're a run first team. They want to run the ball, and he had all that happen to him. And he didn't produce at peak levels, but he still produces. And with JSN, I've seen the training camp clips of him running routes. JSN is going to be JSN next year, and he's not going to be rookie JSN. He's not going to be second year JSN. He's going to be third year JSN,
right?
Which is an elite wide receiver with offensive player of the year upside. I just don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown has offensive player of the year upside.
No, he doesn't. But I do trust if he goes 1,411 again, that's still really, really good. It's not going to be best wide receiver in the NFL.
I trust JSN to have 1,400 yards. I mean, that's a 400-yard cut from last year. That's pretty substantial. That's some wide receivers' entire seasons is 400 yards. That's what he could get cut. And he's just starting from a very high point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough with the offensive player of the year. It's an interesting way to frame it because for a long time, my thought has been like, there's kind of maybe even like my top 10. These are the dudes who can win offensive player of the year if everything breaks right for them, because a lot of it is about getting counting stats, meaning that a lot of it is about situation. So when I look at these guys, I'm like, could they go for 100 catches, 15, 16, 1700 yards and double digit touchdowns? I mean, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown certainly could do that. He was at 1,400 last year, but it's like, it's not impossible for him. But then when you think about offensive player of the year, it's not about just like, can you put up a really special stat line? Like, for instance, like CD Lamb did it, in 2023. It's about, can you be better and more productive than like Chase and Puka and JSN? And like Chase is like already in that offense and Puka's already in that offense. And you're like, man, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Not only that, but like Bijan and Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley.
True.
Right. Well, I'm even just thinking like, can you be the best receiver? And then whatever happens with running back is whatever happens with running back. But it's just like, I think a lot of these guys have offensive player of the year potential in the sense that they could get numbers that could win you offensive player of the year. Do I really see them like being better than what Chase and Puka are going to do this year unless they get hurt? I don't know. That's a little bit tougher of a bet, but yeah, I think there's a lot of good players at the top, I guess.
There are, there are a lot of good players at the top, but I'll even say JSN's actually my wide receiver 5 behind Justin Jefferson, who coming off a pretty
behind Jefferson.
Okay, Jefferson's coming off a pretty disappointing season. Only 84 catches, 1,000 yards, 2 touchdowns, but that's with 9 throwing the ball. The season before with Darnold, he had over 100 catches, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns. And I think getting Kyler in there, even though Kyler has his issues, I don't think they're going to be like some generational offense out there in Minnesota. But I think they can be good enough that Jefferson's production gets back to where it was before. And Matt, you talk about guys who could go for offensive player of the year, be best receiver in the NFL. That's Jefferson, right? Mm-hmm. So I trust, that's a guy that I'm just trusting based on the talent. And I think the quarterback situation is massively improved and they have a good offensive play caller there as well.
I buy into Kyler, but he's injury prone. And if he goes down, there's just
That's
no
fair.
guarantee that Jefferson's going to be able to overcome whatever backup they throw out there, whether it be Brosmer or JJ McCarthy. Wentz is not so bad, but honestly, like, these guys are good enough so where they can overcome poor situations, but there is a limit to how bad your QB play can be before it clearly isn't something you can work through in a fantasy context or in a real life context. Jefferson obviously suffering from that, and they're bringing back all the same backups. So when I look at these top 5 players, like, Jefferson does have really good upside. It's still going to be tough, even if Kyler hits to be the wide receiver 1. That would be a heck of a bar for him. I'm not very low on him or anything. I feel like I'm high on him because of the talent, but ahead
Jefferson
of Amon-Ra
Jefferson's
is
ADP
like,
is at 6 right now.
yeah, I got him at 5. I have it JSN 3, Amon-Ra 4, Jefferson 5. When I look at all of these guys, the easiest thing that could go wrong outside of an injury to themselves is Kyler going down and the Vikings offense falling apart. It is entirely dependent on him being 100%. And it's not like he's missed some time recently. I guess you could say the same with Burrow, has missed a lot of time, but Flacco as a backup is a lot more trustworthy, and Chase obviously gets ridiculous targets. I'm a little worried that Jefferson has a bigger cliff to fall off that he can't do anything about, and that could cost him. So it does make me put him down a little further. I would say he's not in the same tier. I have it Chase and Puka tier 1, Jason Amon-Ra tier 2, and then a very big tier 3.
Yeah, I see that. I would say that there was a stretch with Carson Wentz where he actually produced quite well and had like 95 yards a game, never under 70 yards during this stretch, and 126 yards versus Pittsburgh, 123 yards versus the Browns. So it seemed to kind of be a JJ McCarthy thing for Justin Jefferson last year.
Or Brosmer, who, like, both those guys were
or whatever.
just awful. I think that's a good point. I will say I'm worried that they don't end up putting in Wentz because, like, they say, like, we're betting on the young guys and we might as well with McCarthy. Like, what's the point in putting in Wentz out here instead of our guy we drafted in the top 10 and we're probably screwed anyway? Maybe
because
McCarthy,
Wentz can get Justin Jefferson 75 yards. That's the point.
Because, yeah, maybe KOC's got him on the fantasy team too, or maybe he's like, screw it, if we're going to go down, like, we have a great defense and we just don't want to go down, not even able to throw it to Jefferson. I get, but
that should be a law. Head coaches should need to be in a fantasy league with all of their skill position down.
Minimum target thresholds for key fantasy players. Absolutely.
But if they trade JJ McCarthy or something, or if they make him third string, or if JJ McCarthy just genuinely improves a little bit to the point where, like, he can get Justin Jefferson the ball somewhat on time, like, perhaps Justin Jefferson is a little bit more bulletproof than it seems. And there's no guarantee that this even comes up. I mean, Kyler has been injury prone, but he's also played seasons before. I mean, 2 years ago, he had 16 games, something like that, and, like, supported Trey McBride through a lot of yards and all that. So I think that Justin Jefferson isn't in the worst fantasy situation. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, he's had plenty of big seasons with him before. It's not like Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold, I think, are like in completely different dimensions than like a prime Kyler Murray. And he's been an offensive player of the year and somebody who until last season led the league in yards per game all time. So I really like Justin Jefferson as a player. I think he's still maybe the best pure receiver in the league when you look at the explosiveness, the physicality, the hand-eye coordination, all of it together. Like, he's kind of just the best guy to target and come down with it, I feel like, which is pretty much what you want a wide receiver to do. So I put him in that kind of top 4 wide receiver tier with Chase, Nakua, and JSN, just because I think he's in their talent level, and Amon-Ra's a little bit behind. Maybe that's too much just thinking about what I see on tape and my aesthetic preferences, Matt.
I think tape is still king in fantasy football. There's a balance with it, but
I think so too.
I think situations are important, but ultimately what makes guys good or bad is how good they are. And situations, I learned this last year being kind of a Harvey guy, but situations can be overvalued pretty significantly. I will say, especially for receivers. Now, for running backs, I do think situations matter more, but even then, you do have to be careful not to overvalue them because then you end up feeling like a schmuck where you're like, well, the situation was so good. It's important. It really, really is. And then you draft a guy that you know really isn't quite like that, and they like lose the battle to the back of it. You're like, all right.
Yes, that is the problem with situations, is that it's also a good situation to whoever's directly behind the guy you're thinking about. So if you're like, oh, great, J.K. Dobbins is hurt, like he always is. This is such a great situation for R.J. Harvey now. It's also a great situation for Jaleel McLaughlin behind it, but you don't think about that. Like, you only think of the one guy instead of kind of everybody rising up together. And if you're not somebody who's super reliable, they're not going to rely on you. Like,
that's how you get into these fantasy situations where it's like, okay, Dobbins is going. It's supposed to be this guy. It's supposed to be this guy. This is the guy next. You spent the big draft pick on him. It's him. Come on. And then they don't play. And it's like, so the coach is just stupid. The coach has something wrong with him or something. It's like, no. But there really, fantasy football is about finding the balance. I think you should have convictions. I think that's the whole point. And you should really just draft the guys you want. There's, especially in a home league, there's no point in playing with dudes you don't rock with. But like, you gotta, the value really is where people aren't finding that balance and they're overestimating a situation or overestimating even a talent or underestimating a bad situation in that regard. Right. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough list to make.
It is a tough list, and situation becomes interesting because the guy that we kind of skipped over here is CeeDee Lamb, right? We went Chase 1, Puka Nacua 2, JSN was 3. I'm just again reading off the ADP. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 4, Justin Jefferson was 6, CeeDee Lamb was number 5, and I feel like I feel like I'm a little lower on CeeDee Lamb than consensus just because Pickens is also there. And even though this is like a good passing offense and Dak Prescott's really good, and I like CeeDee Lamb a lot, I am worried that like Pickens did outproduce him last year.
Sure. Right. CD was kind of banged up last year. When he was healthy, he was still the alpha there. The offense is awesome and can support multiple wide receivers pretty easily. I love Dak. They pass a lot. I think the defense will still be bad. Honestly, I would say I'm lower on the Cowboys defense than the Bengals.
Ooh. I think I agree.
But it's tough. It's tough.
I haven't done like a defensive tier list here, but
I think I'm higher on the Cowboys defense, but I also don't think it's to any kind of extent that matters for like wide.
Right. That's what I'm thinking now that I've given the take, and I like Downs a lot, and I don't want to be like doubting him. Regardless, I think they're going to throw a lot. I think they're super talented. I think there's a lot of room for CD to be better after the catch. I think the drop issues that he were having, those can be volatile. And to me, he feels like a guy where it is volatility rather than like a true issue with him. Sure. He's still the alpha there. And even if it's close to like a 50-50 or a 1A, 1B, I just don't have that big of an issue with it because when I look at a lot of the other guys in this tier talent-wise, I have just as big of questions, if not bigger, when it comes to like their situation. Sure, Drake London isn't playing next to another star receiver who will take away looks, but his passing offense is completely up in the air right now.
That's fair.
Who knows who's going to be at quarterback any given week? Even if Stefanski makes a pick, and even if it's right, can Tua or Penix last like a full season? The answer seems to be like, no, they can't. And if they can't,
they're supposedly already nagging injuries like in training camp and stuff.
Right, exactly. So who even knows if it'll be one of those two? And it's like, then there's real risk to get down, not only to be on an offense that maybe we don't trust, but to be like getting throws from a quarterback who isn't top 64 or whatever. And then that's where it gets scary. AJ Brown obviously is kind of like looking for a bounce back, and he's had some really concerning injuries, but maybe you could say the same about CD. Nico Collins, there's questions about his situation. And then Pickens I have in that tier, and Neighbors I have in that tier as well. But there's as big of questions about him as there could possibly be.
AJ Brown is my 6.
You've got the Falcons offense like 15th in the SEC.
Yeah, man. It's you have AJ Brown at 6. I think that's just a little too rich for me.
It might be. I mean, it's a big gamble, but I do think that Drake May is that dude. He really is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in football. There's a big risk that the offensive line is not better than it was last year, and defenses against a harder schedule are really able to exploit that. But I do think that he had a lot of success throwing the ball down the field to guys like Kayshon Boutte and Stephon Diggs. AJ Brown, I mean, there's no reason why he can't have that kind of success. I mean, he was having
AJ
a down
Brown at
year.
6, but I do have him above CD, and I've got CD Lamb at number 9. And I guess my concern,
even lower than me. Wow.
Yeah, I guess I just higher on Pickens. I have Pickens at number 7.
So do
and Pickens for me just is a little bit more dynamic these days, like contested catching, after the catch, hurdling, even route running. I think improved. Pickens has improved greatly. CD's had drop issues for these 2 years now, and I guess I'm just kind of wondering if we're going to get that 1,500, 1,800 yard version of CD Lamb again, with kind of Pickens in town and CD getting a little bit older. I mean, even the year before last year, CD Lamb was 9th in his fantasy finish, and I think that's where I've got him this year. And I just am not sure that you said that he's the alpha in the room and he's someone that's going to be the beneficiary of, more of Dak Prescott's love. And I just don't know if that's true. And then you include like Flournoy maybe kind of digging a part of it. Like, I'm just not totally convinced that CD Lamb is going to continue to be like one of the ultimate fantasy football guys. I think there's more risk with him than with some other players.
I think you guys are getting too low on him too quick. And I honestly, I think it's a little weird to do that for CD, but then have no concerns about AJ Brown. AJ Brown's outlook as like an actual player is worse. Now, I agree in theory that AJ Brown is awesome and that he has been in only bad fantasy football situations his entire career, and that has made him a little underrated for his entire career as well. Whereas if he was playing on a very high volume passing offense, we'd probably think about him differently. And now he's on not really that high a volume passing offense anyway, but he is at least with a really great dynamic quarterback in Drake May, who, is an MVP level player. That I agree with.
Yeah.
But he still took a statistical downturn last year. He's had multiple nagging lower body injuries. I think there is real risk with that. Now, you could say the same about CD. Maybe you feel nervous about his high ankle sprain and whatnot. And look, there's a number of guys who, you think about Adams last year. He was dealing with hamstring stuff and he still had a great season. So it's certainly possible. And I'm not that low on him, but the injury stuff really scares me. And again, it's not that high volume of a passing offense anyway. So I question just how high is the upside? Sure, maybe you're dealing with Pickens, and maybe Pickens has to get his 120, 130 targets. But the Cowboys might throw the ball 120, 130 times more than the Patriots.
Right.
Last year they did. That's a big difference. So I think that it's not a bad point that maybe CD just isn't going to be himself, but he was playing banged up. I really think the catching issues was poor variance. He didn't score very many touchdowns, and I think he could get more. And they did look at him as the alpha. Maybe it doesn't work like that anymore. Maybe this is who he is. But I don't think that. And I think the year before, the passing offense was a disaster in general. And it was CD and then nobody else who could win at all. I really don't think that was his fault. And if I gave an excuse to Dak Prescott for that year, which I did, then I certainly should give CD an excuse for not being like overly efficient or a great fantasy player that year too.
No, I like the points that you're making. I do. But I don't know if I'm going to change my ranking just because I think AJ Brown is.
That's good points, man. I don't care.
You can have them.
Good points, but they're a year.
However, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. I think that's all I have to say about that. AJ Brown better is my retort.
AJ Brown better.
I don't have much of a response for I don't care though. I do have Pickens I have Pickens at 7 though.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
So I do think the issue with
Yeah,
Pickens
so
is that there's probably a limit on his upside. It's probably going to be hard for him to get like 150 targets, right? Whereas with AJ Brown, not so much. Drake London, not so much. But honestly, like I have big questions about those two anyway. Neighbors, I have big questions about. Nico Collins, how many targets is he going to get? He's never been a 150 target guy.
No, it's
And I also have questions about like the offense and the health. With Pickens, I don't. Now, maybe he doesn't have quite that insane upside, especially a Brown is a good shot because he could be on a very good passing offense and just be elite.
Yes.
But I think Pickens is being dropped down a little bit because he's more of like a safe bet rather than an upside bet. But I don't know if I think that the upside bets of everybody else are quite where it needs to be for me to say like, no, I'd rather have them over Pickens. I would be very fearful that if I'm drafting like these guys who, in the second round, that there would be a world where they end up kind of frustrating through no fault of their own because it turns out Stroud you're getting a bad break with, or it turns out that the Falcons quarterback room is a disaster. With Pickens, there just doesn't feel like that type of baked in risk. And he already was like a really productive player last year anyway. He was already like a mid-tier wide receiver one.
Yeah.
So I think he still has pretty good upside without having a very clear risk.
I think he could have been first team All Pro last year. I don't think he ended up getting that from.
No, he was second team All Pro. Yeah,
I think he could have been first team.
He was on a tear for sure.
And that was with maybe some time at the beginning where he's getting acclimated, and a week at the end where he plays. The Cowboys are out of it, and he plays 41% of the offensive snaps. That's a little bit risky to say because he played all 17 games, and that's a big part of finishing high in fantasy. Is like, well, maybe next year he plays 13 or 14 or something like that. Time getting acclimated, and a week at the end where he's kind of in and out of the lineup pales in comparison to like missing a game. But I think there's a world where he hits the ground running, and the Cowboys are better next season. And someone who could have been first team All Pro with 1,400 yards is more like at 1,500 or 1,600. I think he has the talent, and he's in the situation. So I think he's a pretty solid upside bet. But we are going into year 5, and he's never been more than second team All Pro. So maybe that.
Sure, but you could still you could be a great fantasy player. Second team All Pro ain't all that bad.
No, it's
and I
not.
will say,
no, it's not.
In terms of points per game, he was 6th last year, only behind Puka, JSN, Jamar, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Rashee Rice. So, like, I don't think there's anything, like, phony about it at all, really. I think he's just an awesome player and an awesome offense. And, yeah, there's, like, a big sort of target hog, but that is just not as big of a risk to me of a guy who already kind of worked through that. Versus like maybe my quarterback is Theo Ash. Maybe.
Yeah. What would you think of the strategy of like if you rolled in and you saw your opponent was starting Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens? Is this a good strategy to you? Just draft all the Cowboys?
Could you do that?
Ooh, you could. You could definitely get like CeeDee and Pickens. I don't know if maybe you could do that at like the turn and then you go get Dak. Well, you would be very dependent week to week. So you would be like really, really, there would be some weeks where that would kill you, but it'd be pretty sweet. And I do believe in the Cowboys offense a lot. I wouldn't be shocked. Ooh, all Cowboys would actually be fired this year.
Would you rather do all Cowboys or all Bengals?
All Bengals.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'd rather have all the Bengals.
I think I'd rather have all the Bengals just based on where I have guys ranked because I have Chase as my wide receiver 1 and I have Chase Brown pretty substantially above Javonte Williams. Tight end might get a little dicey
because of the receiving.
Well, this is the thing is that I have Flanoy. But like I guess where it doesn't matter where the passes are going as long as you're throwing a lot, right? You have all the same guys. If you have to go literally every single one of them,
yeah.
The Bengals have a very easy schedule. Off the top of my head, that would make me want to pick the Bengals so they could go and just kill dudes every week. Maybe, but I don't know how much that really matters versus like you want your defense to be bad. The Cowboys always find the way to be in like pseudo garbage time. This is why Dak has been such a great fantasy player for so long, is that they are masters at getting into game situations where it's like, it's not technically over. You can't quite turn off the TV, but like,
Yeah, it's
come
16
on.
points. Like, if they get the 2-point conversions.
They could get both the 2-point conversions, and I guess the defense could get a stop, I guess. It's like, it's not gonna happen.
And then
but,
it's a field goal, and you're like, that's not the.
you know,
They've got
there's
Aubrey,
5 minutes.
you know.
So, yeah, that's maybe I like Dallas for that, but it kind of depends on.
It would be tough. I don't.
Aubrey might push the Cowboys over the top.
That's not a bad point, especially if we're talking 32 team fantasy. Well, if we're talking 32, then it's the Bengals.
Yeah, that you want the missed kicks, but yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. The effectiveness of rolling in with the all Cowboys or all
follow up question: who would be the worst all team fantasy team? Why'd you say buddy?
Come on, man.
What?
Probably the Bears.
No, it's not the Bears. I like all the Bears guys. I can't lie. I like all of them in fantasy.
It could be
Vikings?
the Dolphins.
No,
maybe the Dolphins. The Dolphins would be good because you might not be able to have like the bench space for who ends up to be like all of their receivers that will end up getting time this year or something like that. But at least Malik Willis will run.
That's true.
And
you have
Devon H. No, man, it's the Browns. Well, you have Fannin and Judkins.
Cardinals?
Your receivers would be. No, Cardinals would be good.
Cardinals would actually be good. The Cardinals are kind of doomed just because of the division that they're in more than anything. Like if they were in the NFC South, the Cardinals would have a more rosy outlook. The fact that the Cardinals are like one of the worst teams in the league has a lot to do with there's like a 0% chance that they win their division. But like Trey McBride, Marv, Wilson, Love, like Brissett, like people are hyped about the Falcons.
The way these Marv clips are going around on Twitter, man.
Hey, he got a good clip the other day I saw.
Okay.
It wasn't all bad. Plus, the assistant trainer was throwing him worse balls than he was throwing Michael Wilson.
We're blaming the assistant trainer on Marvin Harrison.
Look at the tape. Those throws are not as crisp.
Fair enough. So moving on in the receiver ADP here, Drake London is number 7. Nico Collins is number 8. AJ Brown is number 9, and George Pickens is number 10. So it feels like we're all significantly higher on Pickens than consensus here.
Maybe Pickens doesn't, because he was really efficient on 130 targets. Maybe that's what I'm underestimating with him. I just think that he's a lot safer of a bet than these other guys. I will say, I do think there's been a little bit overweighting from all of us about Houston's offense and their struggles. Nico Collins is still a pretty spectacular talent. He's still really efficient. Maybe they start to throw a little bit more potentially, or Stroud is maybe back to form a little bit more. I don't know if I want to write him off completely, even though I feel like for a lot of this offseason, I kind of been like, buddy, you look really horrible. But, I've said it a million times with Bryce, like he struggled under pressure and then kind of came back and got himself in check. Stroud might not be perfect at it, but he might not be as bad as he was the last couple of weeks. There's no guarantee. AJ Brown obviously has the upside if he's the old AJ Brown, but I have him at 10 because I think there's real risk when you see a downturn at his age in production.
Yeah, definitely.
That's maybe as big a risk factor as any of those guys that you just listed had. In fact, it definitely is, to be honest with you. But the upside is really, really crazy with him, too. It's just a shame that they don't want to air it out. But maybe if they have A.J. Brown, they'll be willing to throw it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I have it Pickens 7, Collins 8, London 9, Brown 10.
And I have Pickens 7, Lamb 8, London 9. Devonta Smith is my number 10.
Come on.
Smith?
Look, Matt. No, Matt. You said it yourself. You have to draft your guys.
You don't have to do that, though.
I have a more egregious reach, I think. We haven't said who my number 6 is yet.
Who's your number 6?
Malik Neighbors.
I have him at 11.
We're done with the injury scare. We're done fear mongering.
Fear mongering. I mean, look, he's looked smooth in the training camp clips, right? His cutting looks good. He feels like he's loading up weight very well. You don't see any limp, right? But there is always there's that in the back of your head. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about the fact that they had to go in to his knee a second time. You're thinking about the fact that his quarterback, got hurt last year as a rookie and plays in a way that could get him hurt again. Like, there's just a lot of potentially.
I don't care who is throwing
negative
Malik
factors.
Neighbors the ball. To be honest.
it's Winston as the backup. I think it's actually very good for fantasy that Winston is
that's
there.
Actually
so I have
valid.
Neighbors at 11. He's in that tier 2 of receivers for me, and really, I mean, if he had never gotten hurt, maybe we're talking about him as a tier 1 guy. He really is that good. I don't think having him at 6 is crazy. I just think for now I have him at 11 because we don't know what the outlook is injury wise. And if you're not drafting for another month, he's one of like the final guys I would slide in and pick their position on my board. His injury stuff is a bigger risk than anything that any of the guys ahead of him have by a long shot. But it is fair to point out the prognosis recently has been really good. He didn't go on PUP, I don't believe. It turns out the cleanup surgery didn't happen when it was reported. It happened earlier. So it's not as close of a timetable you're looking at. Neighbors is an unbelievable freak talent in every way. And I think the offense honestly projects to be decent. I don't think
and the
that's going to be
defense
some
projects to be
disaster
horrible,
scenario.
and there's no one else there besides him. And he's sick.
I'm not as low on the Giants defense as you are. I think they're significantly different from what they were last year. I think Carter is going to take a step. I think the edge rushers overall are good. I know that the run defense was bad, but they have completely different linebackers now. And Reese, I really think, is immediately going to change the game there. Plus, they did bring in some solid role players against the run in terms of Reeder and Harris. So I think that maybe the best case scenario that could play out here would be that they're a bad defense against the pass, but they're actually decent against the run. That would be perfect. So you can't chew up clock against them. That would be great. And yes, Dart does have an injury concern, but Winston really is a let it fly type of backup. And that makes me feel a lot better about that, at least from a standpoint of Neighbors fantasy production. There's a few other weapons here. Maybe it's not like Neighbors and totally nobody at all, but it's not very strong. So he should really, really crush in target share. And he totally did his rookie season. So I really don't hate having Neighbors that high. He's one of the guys where I straight up have to be like, tell me how the injury stuff is when the draft happens rather than put him in now.
Yeah.
Devonta Smith at 10 is nuts though.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
He's reliable. He's a good receiver.
I'm not saying he's not a good receiver.
I don't want to know where you have Lemon, bro.
Oh my God.
We'll get to Lemon. Or maybe we won't.
Yeah,
maybe we won't.
because we're gonna get number 11. Yeah, I get it, man.
No, Lemon is not my number 11.
I don't think Smith is like a bad receiver. I know you love him, but at number 10, you're putting him above somebody like really, really, really good, man, in a really good situation who has like actually had an 150 target season. I mean, the Eagles passing offense is a complete question mark at this point.
It is.
Right? Where we don't know how they're going to look. We don't know how Hurts is going to play. And the only thing that we're probably certain of is that they're going to be low volume and that they can have a very good defense. It's not a good fantasy situation, even when the offense is clicking, and it might not click. Now, it is true that maybe he gets to take over as a number 1, but is he going to like demand 150 targets? Is he that type of guy? I'm not really sure that he is. And even AJ Brown was that type of guy and couldn't always get that type of work. So I don't know. I just think there's too much risk. I think bringing Lemon in makes me feel like it's not just him. So it's like, well, who else are you going to throw to? There's some other guys there. I'm not mad at you for being high on him. I can't get to number 10.
He's number 12 on ADP. Like I thought I was going to be way higher than him on consensus.
Is he really number 12?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got him at like 14, I think I'm going to say. So it's
Like,
where do you have him at?
I have him at 15.
Yeah, I can't
But,
put him
like-
over like Collins and
Right.
But that's the thing is like I have Collins at 13. I just think there's a lot of risk when you pick Collins in a way that even if Smith has this like negative outlook where the offense doesn't quite click the way that you would want it to for him to be like, a true, elite wide receiver, he would still have a pretty good season. He's a great route runner. I think he's got more route access than AJ Brown does. And he's also very good at attacking the football in the air, and he can contort his body in ways that make him an easy target to throw to. Like, I really do think there is some upside for him to take over in this offense. And even though they did draft Lemon and they did draft Stowers, they kind of had to do that anyway, because then it's just Devonta Smith and friends.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe there's like this JSN outcome in there with Devontae Smith. I don't know. I mean, he is a good route runner. He is very.
He's not JSN though.
I don't think
we are getting to a level where like I think he's a very good player. I just don't think he's like that. I'll be real. I just don't think he's that type of guy. I mean, this is a dude who was in half PPR. He was like 33rd in points per game last year. I mean, that just doesn't happen to any of the guys ahead of him.
I think that's
and I feel like if you're saying Collins' offense you're concerned about, well, Collins has put up good fantasy numbers in these poor offenses, and not like good in the sense that, okay, well, he's a startable wide receiver 2 or that he's like relatively consistent. I'm talking about like real wide receiver 1 stuff, and that's not on a high volume of targets. It's even then he's only seen 120. He's just that efficient and that effective. Even last year, horrible year, 10th and half PPR points per game. Smith is at 33. And the Eagles passing offense, not that I really think this is going to happen, because I really do think Petula was that bad, but when they bottom out, they're the worst, like we're going to have 0 passing yards and a half type of situation. So I do think there's a lot of risk with the Eagles offense that you're taking on, and Smith is just not somebody who I feel like is proven to be any type of consistent wide receiver 1, even when things are pretty good. And you have to point to AJ Brown being there to take sort of all the blame for that. I don't know. It's possible, but
it is a lot of risk, but I'm taking my guy, man. Devonta Smith is, I do think Devonta Smith is kind of like that, and he just hasn't really had the opportunity to showcase that.
Why hasn't he had the opportunity to showcase it?
Because AJ Brown's been there, man.
It's all AJ Brown's fault.
What about
it's amazing? It's amazing the year that Pickens was able to have last year.
Yeah.
Or
T and
Dak's a better
and
quarterback than. Well, T and Chase is interesting because T wasn't going that crazy until Chase got there. Chase is so good that he changed the offense for everyone.
Right. So why is AJ Brown a problem for Devontae Smith?
Because AJ Brown's not as good as Jamar Chase, man.
I think that's
sure, but he was pretty close. I mean, he demanded a double team, and it's not like they were double teaming Smith and not AJ Brown. They were, if anything, they were
Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott
Hurts.
are also better quarterbacks than Jalen Hurts.
They are.
They didn't have Kevin Petullo last year, and
yeah, that's all true. They were also seeing less man coverage than ever before. That was always kind of the strategy against the Eagles, was to pack the box because Hurts was a rushing threat and the offensive line was so good that they said, let's not let them kill us with like a 58% rush success rate and take our chances with Hurts trying to complete a 50-yard pass down the sideline, to which Hurts was able to do to a really high effect with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Last year, after they won the Super Bowl, it was proven once and for all that strategy is not going to stop the Eagles, and they went more zone based. And Hurts struggled, right? That might be a problem that they continue to have with this quarterback. And if Jamar Chase helps T. Higgins out, or whatever it is, if Justin Jefferson helps Jordan Addison out, or if doubles one way open up somebody else, well, now Devontae Smith is the one getting the double teams, maybe getting more attention, getting more zone eyes on him, which the Eagles struggle with. And he's been outside the top 20 in fantasy finishes the last 2 years because they've been at the bottom of the league in like pass rate and in pass completions and all that. They don't really have a quick element much. So I just think the Eagles are like, I don't want to cannonball into the Eagles pool because they've had these like more glaring passing game issues than probably any other offense in football the last couple of years outside of the very worst. And I mean, Devontae Smith is a really, really good player, I think, but he's probably more in the range of the guys that I've got kind of around him, like a Chris Olave. Like, Chris Olave is a great route runner. He's a great ball tracker. He's very elastic at the catch point. I think he's similar. I think Garrett Wilson is similar. And they've got kind of new quarterback situations too. So I've got Smith at 14. Maybe even 15 because I could see bumping T up ahead of him. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll say Smith at 15. And as I'm kind of talking through this, I might want to bump T up ahead of him.
Where do you guys have Rashee Rice, who's here at 11 on the consensus ADP? I thought that was a little high.
I get it. It's a little tough with Rashee Rice because
very tough.
In real life, he struggled against man last year, and he's not really like a dynamic threat outside winner, like really opens up the offense the way that a lot of the dudes are above him. The issue is that the work that he does get in Kansas City, even if you feel like it's not that valuable to them, or it's like the yards overstate his actual impact, fantasy football computers don't know that. Your scoring system doesn't know that. And Kansas City, I think, will be a very good offense to invest in. There is some risk with Mahomes. Like, we'll see how he comes along, and it's something to watch in camp. But I have him at receiver 13. I just think he's going to get a lot of that over the middle quick work. I think Mahomes is going to have to lean on that more than ever. I think Kelsey is only declining, meaning that there's more room for Rice to get that type of work. Like, again, you don't want to just bet on situation here, but this is pretty proven to me. And I'm having a hard time. Okay, if Rice doesn't get that work, what happened? Is somebody else getting it? Or is the offense bad? Because it has to be something like that. You can't just be like, it's just not going to happen, right?
So then who else is getting the work is the question.
Because I don't think it's going to be Kelsey taking a step up from where he's been. I think he's probably, he's winding down. I don't think there's a probably about that. Really not that high on Worthy. It's like, I guess maybe Cyrus Allen will be a winner for them, or Armstrong, or one of these Caldwell, one of these guys that you hear about every offseason. But man, I just think I'm betting on Rice to continue to do what he does, and there's a real chance. Like I said earlier, 5th in points per game last year, and he's always crazy. The volume he gets, it's crazy when he's good to go.
Because he's so explosive. Like he really is super explosive. The big concern for me, and I have him at 14 here, Matt, is he's played 12 games combined in the last 2 seasons.
Can't get suspended for sure.
Can't get suspended.
Can't get suspended.
He did have to he did like spend a lot of the offseason in jail when he was supposed to be rehabbing his knee, which is maybe an injury risk. I mean, it doesn't sound good, but also I don't want to, say like,
it's hard to guess on that type of stuff. I really
like
have no
week
idea.
One comes around. Does that matter now that he's had a whole off season? And I mean, he's out there practicing now, so he's got this ramp up period. Maybe that's enough time to calibrate. It could be. He's so tough because like you rank receivers that you'd like to have on your team, and like Rashee Rice just doesn't come in that high. He's very underneath centric. He had major problems dropping the ball last year. He's had off the field and injury issues where it's like, man, like if I'm building a team, Rashee Rice is just so far from the top of the receiver list, so far from number 11. That's for sure. But, and what are you doing in fantasy? You're building a team. You're literally building a team of receivers. And like, it's tough because like on a list to start a team with, like in real life, I'd put him at like 30. And then you read all of these lists and he's like at 10 or 11, and it's like, am I crazy? Am I stupid? And you look at how many touchdowns he scores, and that's the reason why, right? Like the guy
Production's undeniable, though. It just you can't fade his situation when the situation has already made him, or there's a limit to how much you can fade it when it's pretty clear that it already has made him a very productive player. And I do think, like, with the ball in his hands, he's pretty dynamic. Like, there is reasons why they feed him. If it was like totally nothing, I could be like, okay, maybe that role will just be up in the air with like a new set of depth receivers. I don't think it's quite that level. So it's just hard for me to imagine what happens. Maybe he gets hurt or he's off the field for another reason. Maybe the drop issues are there. Maybe the offense just isn't that good because Mahomes can't move and it's too limiting. If you want to make those arguments, I'll hear you out. But personally, I don't really believe any of those things are going to be so much that like he's kind of out of there. And if he's not, man, I don't know. He's probably going to put up a lot of points again. I think 13. He's 13 and he has crazy good upside too at that spot.
Yeah, I mean they start knocking on the door of the end zone, and Reed calls his number in such a satisfying way as a fantasy like fan, or if you have them, like
right.
If you're relying on Zay Flowers or you're relying on, I don't know, DK Metcalf or something like that, it's not as simple as they snap the ball to DK Metcalf and run him up the middle when they're on the 5-yard line. That's what the Chiefs do with Rashee Rice. Like they start knocking on the door. They start feeding him the ball to such an insane extent. They because he's good at it. I mean, he's really good with the ball in his hand. They're like, why not just have him carry it in? Maybe K9 takes some of that. That might be where some of the work goes, like around the goal line.
Maybe
is all of a sudden.
But even then, this guy it's not like he's just touchdown dependent and nothing else. He gets a lot of work regardless.
Yeah.
If he plays a full season, I mean, this is another guy that you probably have to throw in wide receiver 1 conversations.
You do. You don't have any choice,
right?
So I mean,
but you're drafting him in the third round.
He's just, I have him at 13. Maybe there's some risk because he's sort of a very weird profile and a weird situation, but overall, like the production, he does fit the role well. He does do it well. I don't want to just say he's like straight up horrible or anything. And yeah, I just have him at 13. It is what it is.
I'm gonna put him at 20. The vibes with him are just bad.
I think that's tough.
That's round. That's like bottom of round 4, Theo. That's bottom of round 4.
Sure. Oh, I'm aware about the number 20.
Fair enough, man. Looking at kind of the rest of this 10 through 20 range, Chris Olave is here at 13. T. Higgins is at 14. Neighbors, who we've already talked about, is way down at 15. I think the injury stuff is kind of baked into that.
Yeah, that's going.
Zay Flowers is at 16, and then Igbuka, Waddle, Tet McMillan, Ladd McConkey rounds out at 20. I'm gonna throw out the big names that kind of feel a little too high to me. I think Flowers is the first one, and it's mostly I'm just not a huge fan of Zay Flowers, the player right now. On top of Lamar didn't have a great year last year. There's some questions about this Ravens offense in general. And then Ladd McConkey, I'm not super high on after the year he just had. And maybe part of that is chalked up to the Chargers offensive line. And we're saying, oh, that'll be better this year. And he's possibly still the best receiver that they have. But I don't know. I feel like even outside of the offensive line performance, Ladd just wasn't that good of a receiver comparative to his rookie year at the very least. And even if you get regression to the mean, I still don't think that's a top 20 receiver in fantasy football.
I don't know. I mean, Zay Flowers was a wide receiver 1 last year on an offense that threw the least in the NFL. He was very efficient with the targets that he got, and that was also while not seeing good touchdown numbers. Now, I do think it maybe is just fundamental to Flowers that he just doesn't get that goal line work, but you have a new play caller in there. Like, it's not impossible. Yeah. I don't see a huge negative for Flowers at his ADP. I mean, he was wide receiver 24, but he's still a wide receiver 2 even then the year prior. So even if Lamar has issues, I think Flowers, there just isn't a lot of competition there. He doesn't need a ton of targets to be effective. Pretty dynamic player. I'm fine with him. Ladd, even bigger than the offense just being better, no Keenan Allen. It's a big deal. I think he's going to get a lot of the easier work that kind of screwed him over in fantasy. I get not being crazy about him. Maybe you feel like the Chargers don't throw as much, or maybe like they lean a little bit more into the run game, and there's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen out there. But ultimately, I do believe in Ladd's talent, and I think his situation is one of the more improved of any major fantasy wide receiver, between hopefully the offensive line being good enough for Herbert to really get to do his thing and not have to throw him sometimes, like, pretty tough looks, and just Allen not being there is particularly bad competition. Who else did we have? McMillan. I don't really trust the Panthers offense. He's good and he'll get his, but I do think there's a limit if they're going to try to run the ball as much as they want to, which they do want to a lot. Egbuka, I really like. I think Egbuka is a good bet, actually. I'll say I'm not crazy about Godwin after all these injuries. I think he's still good, but not so good that there isn't like room to be the number one and get a bunch of targets.
Yeah. I mean, when Egbuka was the really only receiver on the team last year, he was cooking, right? He was having this super productive, looked like he was going to be offensive rookie of the year type of season.
And then he had a hamstring issue, and it's like, man, what if the hamstring issue is what limited him, and Baker's injury is what limited him, and it turns out that you're in an offense that is going to drop back a ton, and maybe you like some of the other weapons there, but I don't think there's anybody that I'm totally crazy about other than Egbuka, who I think is really good. The separation numbers have scared me a little bit, but ultimately he could be a really productive player and a really high volume offense.
Yes.
Garrett Wilson, I guess the offense could be better. I don't really quite buy it, but they do have more pieces there. And maybe there's a Geno bounce back. Maybe.
I don't even think
I've been seeing the Geno resurgence take. It's coming around. It's starting to.
He'll be in a better situation than he was last year, but I just don't really trust him or Frank Reich all that much. And Wilson has also been pretty dependent on getting like an insane amount of targets. I think he's an elite talent, but I just think the situation is still a little rough. But there's some potential upside there for sure. Higgins, obviously super reliable. And then Olave. Tyson will be there. Maybe that makes it a little tougher for him to go crazy target numbers, but I think the Saints are going to throw it a lot. There's injury risk. I just really like that offense, so of course I'm in on him.
Do you have anybody like that did not get named that you think should be in that tier?
In that top 20?
I'll throw out two names that I've entertained, but they're going to be just outside of my top 20. But neither of these guys, I'm pretty sure, are even in the top 40 of the like consensus ADP big board. Jacoby Myers is number one. I think he did do a very good, him and Parker Washington both did a good job of really helping open an offense up in Jacksonville that was really struggling with Brian Thomas Jr.'s drop issues. And I think Jacoby is just a really reliable, sure-handed guy. And with a full season there in Jacksonville, I think he could have some decent work and some decent production. The other guy is Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson is getting absolutely zero talk, despite being very productive last year. And Marv not really showing any sign of like stealing that work away from him right now. Maybe the quarterback situation is so far gone that there's no hope of it working. But I do think Michael Wilson has proved to be a pretty good route runner, pretty good at, making catches through contact. Like, I really do think he could sustain the workload, or maybe not the workload, but sustain the production and efficiency that he had last year at least.
So
I don't know about Michael Wilson.
Yeah. I have. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Wilson is not in my top 40. Neither of those two that you just mentioned are in my top 40.
Yeah, they're not in most people's top 40s. So
Wilson is 38. Myers is 41 for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Wilson to me is someone I'm probably avoiding. Maybe it's silly because I've been high on him in the past. Like his rookie season explosive play numbers were really, really strong. Yeah. And like I had my eye on him as like this potential breakout candidate. And maybe now I'm the dog who's caught the car and doesn't know what to do with it. But looking at the season he had last year, I don't know how sustainable it really is because it isn't a great quarterback situation in Arizona. Trey McBride is there. Marv could have a better season than he's had in the past and could absolutely slot in ahead of Michael Wilson if he figures out some drop issues. And Wilson, I mean, he had 200 yards versus the 49ers. Jacoby Brissett completed more passes in that game than anybody else in NFL history. He set the all-time record. That doesn't sound like something that's going to be happening like year in and year out. Like the Cardinals got into this bizarro world where their defense was horrifically bad. They had no running back room whatsoever.
That's true. All of their running backs got hurt.
And they just threw it so much every single game. And I feel like when I watched Michael Wilson, it was like slot fades and shallow crosses. Those were where he was getting all of his production. Like, I'm not sure that he is this kind of prototypical star receiver. And I'm not sure that he is somebody who's in line for like that same kind of workload now that they have an extremely strong running back room and a LaFleur brother, and the other LaFleur loves to run the football. Like Michael Wilson seems to kind of be a risk to be a flash in the pan, even though I do think he's a really physical receiver and a good contested catch guy for sure.
Got great contested catch numbers. I do think he's a talented player, but there is a ton of risk both with the volume of the passing offense. They threw it more than any other team last year, especially down the stretch when Wilson kind of got to be like the star of the show as much as he can because, you know, Marv was kind of banged up and whatnot. He had an insanely strong finish to this season. And while I do think there's room to ask if we're just assuming that was all because Marv was banged up or, you know, maybe not treating it like, hey, it could have been a real breakout, because it seemed like he was also doing some pretty good stuff himself. And the contested catch numbers, they're efficient. You know, it's not a volume thing. It's not that he got 50 attempts and caught 20 of them, and 20 would be a great number. It's that he was just doing it consistently and clearly has that skill set. But there's a real chance. I mean, if they, I don't want to say they're a 1-to-1 of the Packers or anything, but man, yeah, if a LaFleur brother comes in there, they could drop 150 passing attempts easy from where they were last year. On top of that, Marv being back doesn't even have to necessarily be second in targets behind McBride to really make it tough to have a target share that allows Wilson to be a wide receiver too. That's the question with him. So I think Wilson, because he's a good player, I still have him at 38, but at 20 would be really, really rich before guys who I think are a little bit more settled.
I couldn't bring myself to put him at 20, and maybe I'll drop those guys closer to like 30 or 32 or something. But I'm looking at the ADP right now, and Jacoby Myers is still behind Ricky Pearsall, who is
that's probably due to change. I would have taken Pearsall healthy above Myers all day. It's a shame because I really was gonna like Pearsall, I think, in the 49ers offense and just coming up and hopefully getting a healthy season, but I guess he's got to wait another year.
He does.
Jacoby Myers, the Jaguars wide receiver room is incredibly interesting, and I think we have to stop and talk about it.
Yeah.
Who do you guys like in that receiver room? Because there's really 4 guys you look at. Ryan Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and then, still Travis Hunter a little bit, at least talking about what his role is going to be, even if you don't love him for fantasy, because the question mark is, will he actually play offense, which is admittedly a very tough fantasy.
I mean, I think he absolutely has to play corner just based on the fact that their cornerbacks otherwise are maybe the worst in the league. Outside of that, I mean, he can play offense, but even so, I don't think he's going to be like the featured guy in this offense. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, kind of immediately in my mind slots in at 3rd in the pecking order, just based on the season that he had last year. And then it's like Myers and Washington. Washington is the more explosive guy, And so I could see him really being the wide receiver one in this offense. But I really do think Myers has a lot of reliability that Trevor Lawrence has not gotten through most of his career. And he might just want to throw it a bunch to the guy who he knows is going to catch it. Because that's who Myers has been for most of his career. It's like, yeah, if you just get this guy the ball, he's probably going to catch it. And he spent most of his career with like some of the worst quarterbacks in football. And so now if he's playing with a guy who is, maybe not top 10, but like pretty solidly top 15, I think he could be in line for maybe the best season of his career.
The issue I have with Myers is that he really did not go that crazy when he got to Jacksonville last year.
No, he didn't.
So it's a little hard for me to imagine. What you're banking on is that he gets another year in the offense and he takes over that way. And he did get to run a lot of routes. They ran him as much as anybody once he was there, or once they got everybody back and healthy from week 13 on. He had 249 routes. Brian Thomas Jr. was at like 215, and then Parker Washington was in the 150s. So to me, the bets are Travis Hunter is the ultimate talent bet. He is a really good receiver. He has incredible ball skills. Ultimately, like, I still believe that he could play that side of the field, but of course, all that could be true, and he just plays cornerback, and there's only so much at receiver he can do, and all he maybe really is in a fantasy sense is somebody who takes targets away from guys who are a little bit more relevant because they're getting all the time work. Myers, he gets to run a lot. He feels like maybe the highest floor, but the lowest ceiling to me. With Brian Thomas Jr., you're betting on a bounce back. I think that the variance of him having drop issues and struggling to work over the middle, I kind of think that might just be who he is. Now, he's still very young, so maybe he gets better, but he didn't have a great catch rate in college. And I feel like we see all the time these guys, they'll be great, and then you kind of realize later on in their career, the ball skills aren't at quite where you want them to be, or there's drop issues and the physicality to work over the middle isn't there, and they turn into one of these dudes where it's very talented, but it's frustrating. I wonder if Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be that. But of course, the year before, he was super efficient on deep ball looks, and he was a wide receiver 1. He was wide receiver 12. So It's certainly not insane to bet on him when you're getting him at wide receiver 34, I believe, right now. And then with Parker Washington, he was really efficient when he got work last year and didn't get to run as much. So maybe you say, does Cohen just not really like him or not see him as that type of dude? And it's possible, but man, if he gets to run the routes that these other guys are and that efficiency stays, he could go crazy. So that's what you're betting on with Parker, is that his efficiency metrics from last year carry over, and then he gets a bigger workload. Brian Thomas Jr. is a bounce back and a talent bounce back bet. Jakobi Meyers is, I guess you're betting on him getting another year in the offense and just being like the highest volume guy there, and then Hunter's all talent.
Jakobi Meyers isn't even a bet. You're like, I don't like gambling. The money you it's better to just save your money and then put it in FanDuel. That's Jakobi Meyers' mentality. So I think it makes sense that maybe you like him, Blaiden. But he's been Mr. 800 yards his entire career. He was Mr. 800 yards in Jacksonville when he got there. It did spike up. He's probably the last guy I'd be interested in, because I just think he's probably going to get 800 yards and be somebody that's on your bench he's
getting 900, dude. Trust.
He's a solid player in certain fantasy leagues if they're big enough. I'm sure he would be a worthy draft pick. But if you're playing regular 12 team, it is going to be a little tough for him to rank highly among receivers to the point. Yeah, make the starting lineup. He's more of a very low end starter depending on how many flexes you have, rather than somebody I'm really taking a gamble on. Whereas with Parker Washington and Brian Thomas Jr., that's super high on upside. If you believe in the Jaguars offense, which I do, and maybe you think there's a chance that their defense could take a step back, which is totally possible because they got so many turnovers last year, but who knows, maybe that's not what you want to bet on entirely. But I think there's a real chance that Jaguars passing offense is good. I think that you can get some really good bets in with these receivers. I personally have Parker Washington on top because I just trust the efficiency metrics most. And I think Brian Thomas Jr.'s issues are real, but I don't have Brian Thomas Jr. significantly far behind
I'm totally with you. I have Washington at like 35 and Brian Thomas at 36. So I don't know, but those guys are probably the dudes who could break through and become more than Mr. 800 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when we're in the 32 team fantasy league, I am absolutely taking Jacoby Myers.
I
Playing
know.
not to
I won't
lose,
even put him on my board.
You won't even put him on your...
Playing not to
I know
lose.
I'm
You're
not gonna
like,
be high
Jared
enough.
Goff, he stays healthy.
Okay,
Jacoby Myers, he gets 800 yards.
But when my 32 team fantasy team is the only team that stays healthy, everyone's going to be like, man.
It's not going to be. Someone's going to take Christian McCaffrey and he's going to stay healthy. And you're going to be like, what? This wasn't supposed to happen. And he scores more points than your whole team combined 1 week.
Which that
Yeah,
can
it's gonna be
happen in the that can happen in the 32 team league. We know
it
it to
can.
be true.
It can. It can.
This episode is brought to you by our new friends over at Dabble Fantasy. One of the reasons we've been enjoying Dabble is that it feels like more than just another DFS app. You can follow your friends or creators, see what everyone's playing, and interact with people before kickoff. We'll be posting our favorite NFL future picks before the season starts, along with all of our weekly entries throughout the year. So you can follow the Stay Hot podcast profile in the app, copy our plays if you like them, leave comments, and we can sweat every Sunday together. Download Dabble today, use code STAYHOT, and when you play with your first $5, you'll get an additional $10 in bonus cash. And speaking of making life a little bit easier, here's something for the parents listening. For all of the parents out there with teenagers, we know you're ready to keep a million different things under control. Cash App is here to make sure your teen's money and their spending isn't adding to that craziness. One thing I know I wish I had learned when I was younger was how to manage money before I was on my own, and that's something that Cash App is helping teens do today. Cash App is designed to help teens age 13 to 17, where they're intuitive with their intuitive educational tools available through sponsorship by an eligible parent or guardian. Teens gain access to a personalized Cash App card that comes in different colors and patterns to fit their style, and the ability to instantly access money from family and friends. Finally, no one wants unnecessary surprises. With Cash App, there are no monthly fees, no minimum balance requirements, and no hidden charges when sending or receiving money. With the Cash App card, you and your teen's balances receive 24/7 fraud monitoring, and if the card ever gets lost, you have the ability to lock their card right from your phone in just one tap. Download Cash App today and sponsor your teen. Visit our link in the description or in any of our social bios. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC, Cash App Visa Debit Flex cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC, and the Bank Corp Bank NA. Pursuant to a license from Visa USA Incorporated. See terms and conditions for the Sutton prepaid card, Sutton Debit Flex card, and Bank Corp Debit Flex card. Savings provided by Cash App, a Block Incorporated brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures.
I've got somebody ranked 15th who hasn't come up yet.
Hit us.
Jameson Williams.
I just kind of think his role is his role. That's my thought on him. I think he's a very good player, though.
Yeah.
More
His
impactful
role
in
is
real
his
life than
role.
in fantasy.
His role is his role. The last 2 years, he's been 10th in his fantasy finish total. I don't know where he's at per game, but total he was 10th. Year before he was 13th. He's kind of had some nice growth, like 41 yards as an injured rookie, 354, 1,001, 1,117. Like, who's to say it can't get even a little bit higher than that? Because it's gotten a little bit higher year after year. And I think that
He's getting one extra yard this year.
Maybe that's true, but if he did even have one extra yard, it'd still be a pretty good fantasy finish. And I think with JMO, there's this thinking of like, oh, this role is his role, and that's bad. But I think that kind of underrates him a little bit, or I think a lot of these deep threats are honestly underrated. Like, I'm higher as you go across my board on JMO, on Pierce, on Watson, on Metcalf. Like, all those guys are kind of primary deep threat Z receivers. And I feel like all of them are a little bit lower on the board than they should be, considering they all had pretty big seasons last year overall. I mean, and for a lot of them, situations that could get better. Like Watson missed the first couple games of the season. Pierce had Phillip Rivers throwing to him for a good chunk of time and still had over 1,000 yards. Like if Daniel Jones is healthy week 1 and has a healthier season, there's still more upside there. But it's not treated like they have upside because they feel confined in their role and they're a little bit older. But I'm just not sure it's true for any of them. And I think they're all pretty safe swings for where they're being drafted.
I think I'm a little bit higher on some of these guys. But I do think part of it comes down to maybe the variance of their role week to week, right? You're not going to get...
That's very fair.
You might get a 30-point, 35-point Alec Pierce week sometimes, right? You might get 2 of those this season. And he might be the best receiver and he might win you, 2 games with that. But then you might have a 7-point performance. Right.
Very volatile, so it's dependent on format. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think I'm more with you on Pierce than I am on JMO. The issue is with JMO, he was 18 and 20 in points per game and half PPR over the last 2 years. At 15, you're really drafting all like with the upside of him maybe taking another minor step baked in. To me, it's always felt like, well, maybe JMO takes a step and then is kind of more than a deep threat, is like getting a humongous volume of work. And it's like, it's not impossible, but it just feels tough with Amon-Ra St. Brown there for him to see a ton of targets too. And then Laporta potentially being healthy again. It actually might head the other way. With Pierce, he was 20th in points last year. He did get crushed by Rivers being out there. And he's being drafted as wide receiver 39 is what I had it down as, although maybe it's changed. And I feel like we always are looking at
moved. It's 35 right now.
The thing with Pierce is that people don't think that he's very good. And he is good. He, I will say, is not going to go and like, it feels like he's even more confined to his role, I guess. Yeah. But he is a very good player and he is very good at it. So
yeah.
I don't know. There is risk with Daniel Jones, and maybe he's more keyed in on because Pittman's not there. But I would say that I'm actually kind of in on Pierce, but I think his ADP is probably about fine because he's dealing with the knee issues as well, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there are some questions with him too. I'm not Pierce. I see the vision. I think JMO is a little bit tougher because he's just where they finish versus ADP.
Mm-hmm. Pierce, I've got at 24. Like you said, the knee injury is scary though. But man, like he was on pace to finish higher before Phillip Rivers, who nobody could have expected, steps in, and now they've paid him, and Michael Pittman is out of the way. Like, I feel like if it was a different receiver, people would be clamoring over Pierce, but they feel like he's confined to the role.
They're treating him like he's still a rookie out of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know. Like 1,000 yards, he's. I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that he hits that after seeing the last 2 years, but I guess I don't know.
I do think
Christian
it's fair
Watson,
to at least say that like Burden is right here at 24, where you have Alec Pierce, Theo, and I think you might have more questions about Burden's outcome than you do about Pierce's.
I certainly do. Yeah, I certainly do. Burden, I'm pretty low on, I gotta say.
Why don't you like him?
I think I'm worried that his career doesn't quite evolve in a real breakout way. He reminds me a little bit of like Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir was a yak demon with like amazing yards per route run for a time. And like some guys were shipped out ahead of him in the Bills receiving room. And he was like the guy you had to have in fantasy. All the numbers said so. And then you kind of found out like, oh, he's just kind of a shifty slot guy who's good at yak. But I don't even think he's that difficult to hit down the field. Like, I don't think his hands are atrocious, but he's just their yak threat. He's their underneath threat. And for Burden, when I go through his tape, I see so many drops and moments where I'm not sold on the tracking and the catching. Kind of the same thing with JMO. I think the reason why JMO's role is what his role is because he struggles to track the ball over the shoulder and really attack the ball with his hands. So he's kind of got to be on these against the grain lines where he kind of gets to look at the ball the whole time and doesn't have to track it over his shoulder. So it's more like crossers than it is goes.
Right.
But the nice thing about JMO is when he catches it, he's the fastest player in the league. So it can be way, way, way down the field. For Burden, I mean, his average catch happened 5 yards down the field last season. So I just kind of worry about him kind of branching off into this like Shakir, Parker Washington, like type of role. I look at Jaden Reed as someone who's like kind of in his tier as somebody to bet on. Like Makai Lemon in Philly to me is a bet that's kind of on par with Luther Burden, and he's way lower on the ADP charts, like way, way, way lower.
He's at
I
40.
just can't get down with Burden where he's being picked at all. He's like right next to Garrett Wilson. That's a little crazy to me. Garrett Wilson was on pace for like double-digit touchdowns with Justin Fields last season and is good for 1,000 yards, I think, every year that he's healthy. I just don't know if Burden has got that kind of upside and role in his future, but I don't know. He is. I see the pros with him too. And if you guys want to say anything, lay him out. And I did a little bit more studying to kind of poke holes in my own theory, but I'll step.
I think I'm fine with Burden. I have a little bit lower, but I think I'm generally fine. I think when we get to this like 21 through 40 range, it's maybe a little bit tighter in terms of like how close some of these guys are. And I think in general, I'm fine where Burden is. I will say I do like Garrett Wilson. I have him at 18 and his current ADP is 21. I feel, and it's not even that I think necessarily his quarterback situation is better. It might be, Geno could have a bounce back year and whatever. But even if it's not, I feel like Garrett Wilson has been able to produce decently well in pretty bad quarterback situations before. He's typically pretty healthy. He's, kind of a spider attacking the football in the air. He's like, he is just we know that he's a really, really good receiver that's never got the situation breaks to have some like crazy season. But I think he's been able to produce in poor enough situations before that I really don't think that changes how I feel about him year to year. I think in general, I'm taking him in about the same place every single season, unless I think the quarterback situation is really, really good, in which case I would take him maybe much higher.
Right. I mean, like, he's like quarterback, wide receiver, 16 points per game last year. So I think like him being a little lower than that is fair if you don't feel like he really has the upside because you don't think the situation is that much better. I mean, going back to Burden, I understand the bet too. I'm a little bit higher on him than you. This is a great fantasy offense that the Bears are putting together right now. It certainly feels like between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams' ascension and all these different like young receiver pieces and the fact that the defense could be really bad and you could be getting a ton of shootouts, which you already kind of were last year, but man, it could be even worse potentially if they don't get the turnover variance or if, the secondary moves they made to kind of replace who they lost doesn't work out. There's room for that. So you're like, okay, who exactly do we want of the big three there? Odunze, Burden, and Loveland. I think Loveland is the man. I think he's the number one. He was running an insane amount of routes. I already went on about this in the quarterbacks episode, and I'll go on about it again when we get to the tight ends. But I'm a Loveland guy. But there is room enough for a team that throws as much as they do, and they did throw a lot last year. I know they're supposed to be like this run heavy team, but they're not.
Sure.
They still get a lot of throws in.
Yeah.
There's room for multiple dudes. With Odunze, you've got really poor contested catch numbers last year, and you got the foot issue with Burden. You have great efficiency numbers, and he's going to be a year older, and he's a guy that Ben Johnson picked. That's the argument. I do think that Burden being wildly ahead of Odunze, I have warmed up to the idea that might be wrong. Contested catch numbers can be a little up and down.
And Burden didn't even get contested catch opportunities last year. I mean, he had one one contested catch opportunity according to PFF, and he didn't catch it, plus a 10% drop rate, which is one of the highest in the league. Like, it's the same as Marvin Harrison. So like, if you're throwing downfield, even if Odunze's been disappointed compared to what he's billed as, he's still that archetype. Like, Burden didn't really show much promise of being, better at that, I'd say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have these two at 23 and 24. It's a pretty tight range. I have Burden just above Odunze because of the foot. But if you told me that Odunze was perfectly healthy, I don't know. I guess I've talked myself into that being the way to go. Ultimately, though, I really am a Loveland guy through and through. And I really think that this offense is going to be able to support multiple really big-time fantasy players. I guess also with Odunze, it's just because Burden's ADP is so much higher than his that you lean towards being an Odunze guy, or you feel like you can get a pretty comparable bet for a whole lot cheaper. So that's my thought process. Odunze seems like good value. Loveland to me still seems like good value, even though he's tight end 3. Burden, it feels very, very priced in.
Very priced in.
It really could very easily shake out that he's still the third guy there.
I was thinking even like, what does a sophomore year breakout, is that almost a bad thing, is kind of what I was thinking, because
I would say for Burden, if you're drafting him in redraft this year, probably not. I would say
probably not. Well, not that a sophomore breakout is a bad thing, but like, are sophomore players perhaps is the thinking a little bit too much like, oh, second year players, that's really where it is, because your rookie rust is worn off and now you're just kind of off to the races? Is that where the biggest jumps at? Because I was thinking about Ladd and BTJ and being like, well, they really sucked their sophomore years compared to
yeah, I mean,
and then I was thinking about Pierce and Watson. I'm like, those breakouts happened more like year 3. Michael Wilson, like, that's year 3. Marv, like, year 2, he didn't have this big breakout. So I was like, what you're looking at with Burden and where he's projected in all these fantasy rankings is like this real faith that like he's going to have a great sophomore season. But like, what about the faith that maybe somebody else could have a great 4th season or 5th season and really break out there? So, sure. Well, but what I did was I looked at every 1st and 2nd round pick since like from 2010 to 2022, I think. And I looked at them year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, on and on, their yards per game. And what I found kind of disproved my theory, where like, of all these 1st and 2nd round picks who had at least 500 yards their rookie season, they all averaged 54 yards a game as rookies, like, of this 56 player sample size. Year 2, they were up at 62.8% yards per game. So they jumped up from 54 to 62, year 1 to 2 as an average. And then they were at 62.1, 61.1, 58.7, 56.8 as these years go on. So there really is this big average jump from year 1 to year 2 as you look throughout history. So maybe that was kind of a case for Burden that I found out later after I already said that I don't think this big breakout is coming. And part of it was like in my head, I'm like, are there really, like, sophomore slump is a thing? That's what was in my head. Like, how can are year 2 players, if a rookie is like promising going into year 2, is that really good, or that you just kind of are who you are, or maybe even sophomore slumping is just as likely?
Like maybe the take is like, do we overvalue being a second year player and the potential for the jump because it's so obvious that it's too priced into their ADP?
Yes,
like the assumption that the growth will be linear. I think that's a fair point. The existence of the sophomore slump, almost certainly, this is just, I guess, an opinion and nothing else, that has to be that it just goes against what you would expect and what makes sense. So you notice it every time that it happens. Yeah. That's what the sophomore slump has to be, not an actual phenomenon, right? Like, sometimes guys just don't have year 2, or there can be a bunch of different reasons, but you would figure they would get better because it's hardest to be a rookie. So when they get worse after more experience, that really doesn't track, and it's very, very noticeable. That's what I've always figured about stuff like that, but I guess I don't really know. You'd have to ask.
No, I mean, I think
into it more than me.
for the wide receivers, it really seems like the year 1 to year 2 rise, like their yards per game number is rising 10% median. And then it's going from year 2 to year 3 down 4% median. From year 3 to year 4, what is it? Negative 8% and then negative 1%. So it almost does kind of follow this pattern median wise of like rookie, you're a rookie, you're not getting much. Second year, you kind of break into a star and you almost peak your sophomore year, and then you kind of ride a wave down. That's how it tends to kind of go. If you were to put every career chart over each other, it would look more like that than anything else. So maybe it is Burden's year, you know, maybe his hands get a little bit stronger. I mean, he's a great yak artist, and he does have some metrics that remind you a little bit of like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like with what Ben Johnson was able to do with him. I mean, Amon-Ra is not a big downfield guy. He's kind of an underneath guy who can then make you miss afterwards. But I think Amon-Ra's hands are way, 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 way better. And at the end of the day, I still think that Burden's breakout is kind of in a big group with a lot of players instead of like, and it's being put on a pedestal as being substantially more likely. Like some of these rookies like Tate and Tyson and Lemon, I think are just as solid of bets as Luther Burden is. So I put him at,
I don't know.
8.
He's in such a good offense, and he improved as the season went on. I think he's so much better of a bet than like, you know, I love Lemon, but Lemon is in a completely different scenario fantasy wise. It's just too much to overcome. Whereas Burden, everything is favorable about him, and you've actually seen him be efficient. You've actually seen him improve already. You've actually seen so much of it. The only issue is that maybe there's too many guys there. Maybe there's one too many dudes there. But like, I'm really not that low on any of the Bears' big three or Caleb or the running backs. So I think they're all pretty dang good. Who else do we need to talk about, Blaiden?
I want to ask you a question to kind of compare these next two, because they're being drafted kind of right next to each other. Terry McLaurin and Devontae Adams. Who do you prefer?
Those are really the next two?
22 and 23.
Did we talk about Waddle?
Waddle, we kind of skipped over a little bit. He was getting picked at 18.
Oh, okay. I thought I liked him at 22. I guess I'm not that high on him. Going into an offense that throws a lot, I think he's a really talented player that gave up a lot to get him. I don't know, man. I think it could end up that he has a huge season, and we know he's capable. And in sort of like the short passing game, you want somebody who really can be a difference maker when they get the ball in their hands. Waddle is that. So he could see a big workload, but there's also a number of guys there, and the Broncos passing offense hasn't proven to be great just yet. In fact, it's been very, very average across the board, but maybe Waddle can be the guy to change that, or at least upgrade it to a level where if you're throwing the ball 600 times, you're going to produce some pretty good fantasy results. That's my thought with Waddle, and that he's really, really good, especially in PPR. I'd really look at him.
Waddle, I think, has some really high upside. Like you said, Matt, seeing a receiver in an offense that does throw the ball a lot, that's as good as Waddle is. I mean, the hit rate of that is, they usually end up being considered a top 5 receiver in football. You know, Chase and AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill. Like, the addition of that kind of a player, maybe you don't consider Waddle in that echelon of talent, but he's got some really, really, high level burner speed. And he was producing at a high level in Miami. So I do think there is some pretty high upside. I have him at 17. I think he's really good.
Yeah, I've got him at 18, right in line. I think.
I'm moving him up. I'm not letting you guys outflank me on this.
Let's go.
I got him at 1. Fuck it.
I think he's got wide receiver 1 upside. I really do. Right? Like him and Rice to me are guys that I think are getting drafted lower that have
wide receiver 1 overall, or wide receiver 1 top 12
overall.
Overall, Blaiden?
Matt's like you have to take the thing and then take it 10 steps further.
Exactly, because wide receiver 1, I'm like, right. Like, it's easy to imagine even. wide receiver 1 overall, like better than Chase and Puka?
He could.
I mean, that's rosy, but I will say like Puka was wide receiver 33 before being wide receiver 1 last year.
He
JSN
was hurt. He was
14.
hurt. That does not count.
He was hurt.
He was
hurt.
insane.
JSN was wide receiver 14 before being offensive player of the year. Pickens was wide receiver 41 before ending up as like wide receiver 4. Like we've seen.
Okay,
like,
but there is a difference even being like wide receiver 6 in points per game and wide receiver 1 overall. If you said that Waddle finishes a wide receiver 6, I'd say that's pretty crazy, but I can hear you out. Wide receiver 1 means that he has to be better than Chase and Puka.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Even JSN was not actually wide receiver 1.
Yeah, you're right.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
But the Seahawks don't throw as much as the Broncos do.
Yeah, but I don't think Waddle's as good as JSN.
Waddle is breaking the targets record.
Okay, we'll go through every player and be like, you don't think this guy will be wide receiver 1, but you didn't think JSN was going to go for 1,800 yards. And we'll just do that at 19,
We'll do that
at 20, at 21, at 22.
Yeah, I'm doing that for Lemon. I'm doing that for...
That's a very dangerous
You're going to be watching it.
You just talk yourself to anything.
When you take Waddle in the first round and he like gets up a little gimpy after his like 10th out route of the season, like he always does, you're going to be like, oh... Forgot about that aspect of him where he's like he's on the ground a little bit too long after tweaking something.
Yeah. No, I yes, that is fair. But I do like Waddle a lot. And you're right, Matt. If he did finish as wide receiver 6, you'd be very happy with that outcome because
I think he has wide receiver 1 top 12 upside. I agree.
Yeah, your injury concerns went out the window for a second there, Blaiden.
That, you know what, that is fair. That is fair. Because I'm typically very, very anti-injury. But I do think the situation is good. Like, Tua
where do you think Bo ranks amongst quarterbacks, though?
I think he's probably in about Darnold's tier.
I think he's a little lower, and I think that his biggest weakness is maybe Waddle's biggest strength of, you know, the type of route that he runs, which is that dig route. Like,
sure,
Bo doesn't throw that very often, so like you're kind of hoping that Waddle,
routes, man. That was Jalen Hurts' biggest weakness too, and then AJ Brown.
It was
true. AJ Brown's biggest strength.
That's true, but I think Waddle's a little different than even AJ Brown is, and AJ Brown was really good. I guess if he's AJ Brown, that would be fantastic. If this is like a AJ Brown type of deal, that would be great. But I don't think
he's AJ Brown, but I do think the Broncos throw a whole hell of a lot more than the Eagles do. So
yeah,
I really like him. I don't think he's wide receiver 1. I'd say Bo Nix is in my tier 4 of quarterbacks, but still lower than Darnold. Yeah. But Bo Nix also has room to grow. It's only his 3rd season. He's only played a handful of games.
He's only 30, guys. He's only 55 years old.
That's true. I will say there is a level of like he played very well in his final game. So you forget that he was very up and down over the course of the year last season. It's
only Jordan Love's 4th season, guys. He's basically a fucking kid rookie with a lot of MVP I'd love to go.
Okay, well, Darnold just won the Super Bowl and got better, so I don't want to hear it. And I know he came into the NFL as a little teeny tiny baby, but he was still getting better at like 25. So
yeah,
we're still counting.
No, I look, I'm in line with Waddle. I think
we're
Waddle's
still getting better, Matt.
A good shot.
True.
You asked about McLaurin and Adams.
McLaurin and Adams, because they're like the antithesis of touchdown scoring in some level. So I think it's an interesting discussion.
I prefer McLaurin. I think in a lot of ways, even though he led the league in touchdowns last year, Adams is kind of coming off his worst season in a while.
He's had consistent hamstring issues. He's kind of in decline. He's very touchdown dependent, and there's real reason to believe that is just who he is and what Stafford likes to throw, and that it's not just complete variance, right? At the same time, you need Stafford to stay healthy in that case. You need Devontae Adams to stay healthy, and you need for him to not actively get worse. And then there probably is still some variance, even if they like to throw those goal line fades, that he could do worse there. He has great upside for how low he's being drafted. But honestly, I had him at 28. I think that's where it starts to be like, okay, I think so, man. He's in a great offense, but there's a lot that could go wrong. And at his age, with his injury concerns, it's not even does he miss time. It's like, does he stay the version of himself that we even saw last year? There's way too much that could go wrong here for me to take him crazy high.
And there's a lot of young guys and like these deep threats that we talk about that are listed behind him. But like, I definitely like him more than Mike Evans. I feel like Mike Evans.
No, I like Mike Evans more for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt.
Evans injuries are a little bit more concerning to me than
for Adams, injuries are just as concerning, honestly. The hamstring stuff at his age.
Yeah, but he still had 14 touchdowns, like 789 yards last year. So like,
he was a top 12 wide receiver. He was a wide receiver 1, but like, man, it was off the back of entirely touchdowns, and you need a lot to go right for him to do that again. That could go wrong. With Mike Evans, look, there's a lot that you need to go right too, but the upside is more like he's the number 1 receiver on one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. That's insane. That's the upside. It's crazy. Whereas Adams, he's a wide receiver 2, and like I know he could score 14 touchdowns again, but like, man, Evans is in as good a spot as you could possibly be almost.
Yeah. I wonder if injuries to old players, I wonder if it matters if you ended the season or not. Because I feel like one of the things that's maybe clouding my view of Evans' injuries and making me more rosy on Adams is like Adams finished the season. Like he finished the NFC Championship game. He was there playing, and Evans just did not have it within him to get through this season. And that's why, to me, it's a little bit more concerning with Evans. I think he was at 37 yards a game last year. That definitely includes games that got cut short due to injury. So that stat needs more refining. But the gods don't really care what happens. And if you go from like 70 yards to 30 yards to, that step that comes next can get really scary really fast. And for Adams, like having finished the year and being in the same spot and being with Matthew Stafford, I just feel like he's a little bit safer than Evans, but maybe he doesn't have the same kind of upside. But
I don't think so, man, because Evans could be an 150 target guy and that level of touchdown score. He totally could do that. His upside is nuts. Now, I know he's a big risk. I'm not downplaying that. He's had bad injuries and he didn't look great last year. But I will say, we've talked about it before. In 24, he looked like the best version of himself.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And man, I think that makes me feel like there's at least a level to him where it's like he is aging well. Now, maybe the injuries zap all of that, but maybe the injuries are just an issue in that season and that he can bounce back better in the way that he's been good longer than you would expect to. And all of a sudden you have a guy who is a really good receiver and a really good offense getting a ton of targets like that. I think the upside for him is nuts for where he can be drafted. That's because the risk is crazy, but I'm taking that over Devontae Adams.
I see where you're coming from. The thing that sticks out to me is like, last 2024 was crazy. I mean, he had the highest success rate of his career, the highest catch rate of his career, a very high yards per target number at 9.1. But then he follows that up with, and you're right that maybe this does need some refinement due to the injuries, but 46.8 success rate, which is the second lowest of his career outside of, only second to his rookie season, the lowest catch percentage of his career, the only time he's gone sub 50 in his career, and then the lowest yards per target of his.
But those numbers, he's playing hurt through those numbers. Maybe he's too old to bounce back from injuries, but he was playing hurt. I don't know if I really count those numbers against him.
Fair.
Adams also, you could tell the same story where his yards per game was the lowest since 2015 and his catch rate was the lowest of his career last season. And I think Stafford, for as good as he was last year, I think he had a negative EPA while targeting Adams. There were so many drops and miscommunications. Like, it was actually not as spectacular as the touchdown numbers make it sound, but he did lead the league in touchdowns. That's the damn thing, is like, if they get to the 3-yard line and it's little tempo release fade to Adams that Stafford drops right in the bucket and it's free money every time. Like, I kind of think Adams still is going to have that in his bag because it doesn't take a big degree of athleticism for him to do that. So I think that he's still a pretty safe bet to like farm touchdowns on the goal line in a really good offense. And even though he had a downturn statistically as well, yeah, the fact that he finished the season and wasn't quite as banged up as Evans by the end, while being, I guess he's not younger. Man, Evans should be older than he is, man.
What do you mean he should be older?
He's been in the league for a long time. He was drafted really young. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, the upside with him is crazy. It is crazy. And I guess it is for Adams too. I guess. But not in the same way.
No, it's not as
Evans
like,
could even be
God.
a little washed, and because of like how favorable the role is, it would be like, oh man. I don't know. I get it, and I think everybody is very scared because the 49ers, you see the trading camp clip with the substation in the background. It really is crazy.
So funny. Dude.
I would think that is injuring the players too if I was there.
It's ominous.
Because it's really looming for sure. You have to admit, all right, fine, it's not actually doing anything. It's conspiracy theory. It's nonsense. We can't support that type of thinking in these times. However, it's looming for sure. It is ominous. It has an aura about it, and maybe that gets
it probably is humming.
It's a psychological thing.
If it was quiet at the practice field, you'd probably hear like a pretty loud bzzz.
It's definitely humming.
And when everybody's quiet, when someone goes down and the cart is coming out and everybody's quiet on a knee, you know what you hear? The substation. And then it gets even more scary.
And you know what? I bet they have the loudest Bluetooth speakers ever at practice.
Football players are dumb too. Like, they all think that thing is hurting them. Like 50% of them probably believe the earth is flat. 100% of them.
You think 50% of the NFL thinks the earth is flat?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know. There's no way.
Dude, Jason Kelsey spoke about this.
We should next time we are at like the Super Bowl thing, if we get the chance, we gotta just start asking, do you think the earth is flat?
Kelsey said
those things that make people really mad.
Yeah,
Jason Kelsey said Jason Kelsey said 10 to 15 players in every NFL locker room think that the earth is flat.
Oh, he's been in one NFL locker room. There's no way he could.
Well, there's been a number of people.
Yeah.
It's a different NFL locker room every year. Like, and he has a brother in the league, maybe. I don't know. He has maybe friends or coaches.
Maybe a brother in the league.
I don't know if I trust Jason Kelsey's perspective.
He has no idea what is going on in Miami. He doesn't know what those players are like. He's never been to college. He's never been to, like, he was at the league forever. No, NFL players are so conspiracy brained. Like, give them a podcast and have them like say what they really feel. It is not going to be like, it's not going to sound like NPR. That's for sure. It's not going to be grounded in the data and the science.
Maybe not. 50%? That sounds
50 is okay. 50 is 50.
I would believe you if you said 10. I would believe 10%.
I would say, I think a significant amount, I think, is a fair way to say it. But we gotta keep moving through some of these receivers.
We do. Up next is DJ Moore. Well, I'll list off the remaining here of 26 through 30 is DJ Moore, Christian Watson, Jamison Williams, Roma Dunze, and Carnell Tate. But I think we should talk about DJ Moore first.
I think Moore is in a better position. I think he's going to be the guy there. If he gets a lot of screen work and they really want to lean on him as a yak player, then he'll perform well. but I am scared about a older receiver who is seeing a downturn. There's no reason why his efficiency should get worse. And it's kind of all being blamed on Ben Johnson, but maybe he's just taking a step back as a player. And the Buffalo offense is really good, but it also doesn't throw a ton. And I don't know if it's just like, well, if you get to play with Josh Allen, that's that, and you're going to be receiver one. I don't know if that's quite how it works, right? Because Allen is a great player, but it's not necessarily because he's just going to go and like Stafford his top guys. There's different ways to get to that. Or like Lamar is a great player, but it's not necessarily like, well, you're Lamar's number one, even if he is super efficient throwing the ball. Maybe that's not a great comparison, but I just feel like you could still see it spread around a decent amount. And I don't know if there's anybody who has played for Buffalo where you're like, well, this guy would be nothing, but the situation is just perfect as a receiver, where they then take a huge step. That being said, it's still favorable to be like the number one here, clearly, and the outside winner. But I guess I'm just worried about a scenario where it's too much of him kind of like needing to beat man and press, and they need him on that outside sort of filling that role rather than him just getting fed the ball all the time. It could still be other dudes like Kincaid or Shakir getting the easy work or the underneath work. I don't hate him at ADP, but I do think there's questions. Maybe his upside is still really good, though.
I'm a little bit lower on DJ Moore, and I do actually like the comparison that you made where, yeah, you don't always see these receivers come into Buffalo or Baltimore or the Chargers or a lot of these teams or even the Chiefs where we're like, yeah, like, oh, this should be the Tyreek Hill replacement. Who's been able to really do that? The answer is no one. Maybe you say Rice. Maybe you say Rice.
Rashid Rice has been incredibly favored. He's like probably the number one player of that in the NFL. I know what you mean. Like I agree.
Yeah. I do think it is going to be a little bit tough. And I also like DJ Moore just hasn't been that productive, but I guess, here at 26, that is probably baked in. I think all in all.
I think it's decently baked in what I'm saying right now, to be honest with you.
So I've got him at 23. It is weird how he played 17 games and had 682 yards last year. Like that's just
not good.
It's a low number for such a good offense and as much as he played. And honestly, as like athletic as he still is, like he's still a vertical threat. He had some of the biggest plays of their season last year. Like he can still get open. But there's just been a lack of attention to detail, I think, to some of the nuances of route running that's made him a little bit tough to get on the same page with. I think Caleb probably has also lacked some minutia of playing the quarterback position over the last 2 years that I do think that Josh Allen has. So I do think that DJ Moore is going to see an uptick in production. I think Allen, it might not be, I like your Lamar comparison. Like, just because you have Josh Allen doesn't mean you're getting all these touchdowns. He'll run it in himself. So from a fantasy perspective, he doesn't necessarily have to be a kingmaker, but can he be a kingmaker? Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you're putting it. I'm not crazy about him, but he's certainly not off my board. I'd be very comfortable drafting him because the upside is very real and the talent is real. But like, man, he did get out received by Burden and I think maybe even Love. Like it's kind of nuts considering the head start that he had as not being a rookie playing in their first games, right? And I mean, Burden had like 4-0 games essentially to start the year and then like 100-yard game mixed in there. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that's such a horrible sign. And yeah, Caleb's got his issues, but that's true throwing to Adunze or throwing to Burden or throwing to Loveland. So we will see with him. McLaurin, getting older, little touchdown dependent too. He doesn't see like 150 targets. I like Daniels. I like the offense decently. He should get a great workload, but I think he's probably about fair right here. I do think he's in a good position to get a lot of touchdowns again, but it's tough when like the only big time year you've had is your one double-digit touchdown season, and then you haven't gotten back up to that 13 number ever again. But he's fine. Who else did you have? Christian Watson?
Christian Watson is here at 27, JMO at 28, and Rome at 29 before the first rookie Carnell Tate at 30.
Okay, I think Watson is pretty good. You know the risk you're taking, but he is a very talented player. And I kind of do think the Packers are going to throw a little more next year. I
do
get the
too.
feeling that's not really camp talk. Maybe my feeling is that you have said exactly that like 2 episodes ago, Theo. But I'm buying into that. And I just think the receivers are pretty good. I like Golden too, honestly, even though all the numbers say that Golden is bad and that is true and that you shouldn't trust him.
I don't
I
think
just
that all the numbers do say that Golden is bad.
from a
actually.
production profile, he wasn't he only kind of a late breakout at Texas, unless I'm misremembering.
Yes.
And then he had 300 yards last year. So like, it's not
Okay.
I know.
The yards and touchdowns numbers all say he's bad. Have you seen his efficiency on 3rd and 4th down? Our horrible receivers leading the Packers
Bro,
in
on
EPA
third
on
and
3rd and
six,
4th
when
down.
the clock says 7 minutes, he's the GOAT.
He actually is. I mean, he Golden, I mean, this is a complete side quest that we're talking about now, and I don't have him in my top 40, but Golden is, I mean, he's another guy like that I kind of look at when I look at Luther Burden. Like, you got to take Luther Burden where? And Matthew Golden is like, you know, not nearly as highly regarded, but he's somebody.
Burden has so much better signals, though. I know what you mean, but there's a lot in Burden's favor.
There's a lot in Burden's favor, but like the signals are like a flea flicker versus Dallas.
No, they're like he had over twice as many yards as Golden did last year.
Well.
I know he caught a flea flicker. I know that's BS and that screws up his numbers or whatever. But like, man, I think when you consider the offense as well and the volume, he is in a better situation.
It's not enough. It's not enough to say this gap is so big. That's for sure for me. But Golden, he just catches a lot. Like he's got good hands and a good radius, and he caught a big deep ball versus Cincinnati that was pretty tightly covered, and he used late hands to catch that. He caught a back shoulder fade versus the Broncos that he kind of had to extend and fall away from. Versus the Browns, he had a shot over the shoulder. Like, those were the things that, I mean, if we're keeping the comparison with Burden, like he wasn't really doing, which I think bodes well for Golden. Is I think he maybe has a more full route profile, but we'll see how much that actually ends up mattering. It might not.
I believe in him. I'm not against you on Golden or disagree with your Burden complaints. I just don't know if I could say that they're even remotely similar in a fantasy context, because you saw it last year with Burden a lot closer. And towards the end of the year, especially, like he just was starting to be he just was a relevant player, right? If you cut out like the first 5 or 6 weeks or whatever.
Golden beat the buzzer, bro. He was towards the end of the year in the play. He's a playoff riser. I
believe it, but it's the sample sizing gets too small for Golden. You know why Golden is not going as wide receiver 20.
Well, yes, I do know, and it's because the receivers in front of him are crazy.
Even bigger demons.
The receivers in front of it's Christian Watson, bro. He's basically Randy Moss.
Christian Watson has gotten nice. He really is a nice player. The injury profile with him is really tough, and then the offense is also not necessarily good for fantasy football. So that combination, kind of being like the deep threat centric guy, might not be everything that he does. I feel like he's a little bit more dynamic than maybe like a Pierce, but I'm fine with him at ADP. And while we're talking Packers receivers, I do have Reed in my top 40. I have him at 40.
Oh,
I have him at 30.
Ooh, wow, that's really, really aggressive. I like it though. I kind of like it, man. I mean, he was a really effective player. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of that slot work over the middle and whatnot. Totally. He's a sweep threat. They just want to get the ball in his hands. There's one less mouth to feed with Daub's gone. Like, I don't know, man. I think if they really do throw it more, he already was, pushing for 1,000 yards, and he didn't even start every game his second season. So he totally is somebody that could be the sneaky guy who takes a step that people just don't quite see coming. Again, the volume of the offense historically is what scares me. But I really do think they should throw more. And LaFleur is saying we should throw more. They might throw more. And even if they don't, it doesn't disqualify him or anything. So I do kind of like all the Packers receivers a decent amount, at least at their ADP. I think they're pretty good value.
Yeah, I like Watson a lot. I have him at 21.
21. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he's my favorite.
The injury stuff. No, that doesn't make any sense with your injury takes, though. I have to say
it does. No, I've done this twice now, where it's like him and Waddle. I'm just like totally discounting it for some reason. I don't know why, but I do think that like Watson, in my opinion, is the most interesting and maybe has the highest upside of the big three of deep threats that we've talked about, of him, Pierce, and JMO. So that's the guy that I'm kind of most interested in.
I know exactly why. The two guys that you've been yapping about with their injury history is Lamar and Joe Burrow. What division do they play in, Matt?
Oh,
they play in the action.
Oh, bro.
Do they maybe play against the Browns every year?
Yeah, it's
twice a year, and you're like, what?
Yes.
They're probably gonna get hurt.
That is an easy trap to fall into, to be like, I don't like this guy, but like, okay, I hate his injury stuff. It's just too much. But then guys that you do like, you're like, it'll be fine though.
But I do like Lamar. Lamar is one of my favorite
That's true.
players.
That's true.
I do like him. Yeah.
Yeah. Watson could really break out if he gets 17 games of what we saw last year. He still does have some issues tracking the ball. I wish I was maybe a little bit harder on him when he signed his contract because of that. Like there was one versus Quinion Mitchell where like he turned to get a PBU on Mitchell even though he could have caught the ball. That one kind of drove me nuts. But he had a lot of big time catches as well that he didn't really have in the past, and can also take a slant to the house, take a crosser to the house, take a post or a go, like a lot of different routes he can score on, and was scoring on to a really high rate. And Reed is kind of the same way. I mean, first 2 years in the league, he had 17 total touchdowns. Last year, he broke his collarbone making a sick catch. And when he came back, Malik Willis was in and the offense was really narrowed down. Like, I think he's a pretty substantial threat to score 8 touchdowns, have 900 total yards, something like that. Like, that's something we saw from him each of the last 2 years when he was healthy. And he's just not being priced in like that's going to happen or that there's any upside beyond that. And I think that there is with some of these guys out of the way and as good as Jordan Love is. So I think Jaden Reed is, again, one of those guys where you look kind of later in the draft and you see like, man, no one is taking his upside into account at all, I feel like. And
he was like a wide receiver 2 the year before. I mean, that's really not that much of a projection. And I just think so much about his situation has improved, and potentially even more than that could. So I'm really in on Reed. Watson, even when he played last year, was wide receiver 17.5 point PPR. So it's not like, well, if he stays healthy, he's a wide receiver 1. Sure. It's like, well, if he stays healthy, he's a mid-tier wide receiver 2. And then maybe there's some more room to grow on top of that. And maybe the Packers throw more. But I think at 21, you're either undervaluing the odds that he gets injured or you're pricing in all of like the things that could break his way. That's my thought with Watson at 21. But at 29, I like him. Maybe the ADP that I have come around to being my least favorable. At 30, Carnell Tate, way too high.
You think it's too high? I like it.
I like it.
High. It's the highest of any of the rookies.
I would say, and I don't know if I agree with that like at all. First off, if you put the laser beam pointed at Earth, the death laser, the Death Star, whatever, and you said you have to pick one thing in the fantasy football cycle this year to be oh, come on. Oh, you can't be serious about giving this player the ball. Wan'Dale Robinson getting more targets than Carnell Tate would be it, right?
Yes, 100%.
Robinson has been getting a ridiculous number of targets, at least last year, and I think the year before as well. He had 130.
Both.
Last 2 years he gets 130 targets, which you never take into account as much as you think you should. Now he's in Tennessee, but with the same play caller, man. I don't know why I would expect anything different, to be honest.
And who was Ward's favorite target? Like in college, it was Xavier Restrepo. Like, and last year it was like DK. Like, I feel like he likes these little shifty, like Mighty Mouse type guys.
Maybe.
The situation also in Tennessee, even looking outside of that, because I do have Wan'Dale Robinson as wide receiver 31 for the record.
Sure.
I think he's going to get I think he's going to get a ton of work. Is just my guess. Maybe that's an overprice, and maybe it's playing the situation too much, but it just really feels like that's the coordinator and that's what they want. That's what Dabo wants to do. So I'm banking on it. The issue that I have is that the offense is not trustworthy. Ward is not proven, even though I like him. And Tate also could be a really good player, but there is very much a world where he is like a really effective downfield threat who is better in real life and more impactful in the way that they open up things for the rest of the offense rather than being the all around like psycho, I'm going to get 150 target myself type of dude, especially in year one, and especially with Ward, whose accuracy was inconsistent last year and who did take a lot of sacks. I think they'll do a lot to mitigate that, but with Tate not really being an effective after the catch guy, I don't know if they're just going to say, well, let's force feed him and not worry about anything. And his route tree is a little bit slanted towards just being the downfield guy. I think that puts more strain on Ward to hold up his end of the bargain if you want Tate to produce. So I just think there's major questions about the offense. I don't know if Tate is going to be a crazy high target guy, but it's not impossible. And I feel like Robinson could get a lot of the work there too. So between all of that, I would have Tate outside of my top 40.
I mean, I have Tate higher than I have Lemon.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, like Lemon more.
I like Lemon more as a player, but I do think
Hurts more than anybody.
I do think Tate's in a better situation. I get what your concern is about the volume with Wan'Dale Robinson. I completely forgot that he's had 140 targets in back-to-back seasons. Like, that's completely unreasonable. But at the same time, my vision for Tate is maybe like the Brian Thomas Jr. rookie year, which like he had a lot of targets, but it's a lot of touchdowns, right? And that's kind of what I'm thinking is maybe it's a big touchdown performance, or maybe something what we saw from Devontae Adams even last season, right? Where maybe he's not leading the league in touchdowns, but that's how you could both mitigate pressure and get Tate involved. And if you're going to run the ball and get it to Wan'Dale quickly, and then when you get into the red zone, you say, okay, let's give Tate a shot here one-on-one. Right. And you can even do that early on in the drive, but maybe it's not these hold on to the ball, deep post, wait for something to break open and then throw it across. Like maybe it's not these 50-yard downfield strikes to try and get Carnell Tate, but I do think there is going to be a good workload of him. Like they took him 4th overall. Like it would be, Matt, the level of frustrating that it would be if Carnell Tate if he had like a Matthew Golden type of year. I
don't think he's going to have a Matthew Golden type of year, and maybe outside the top 40 entirely is too far. But like, you can get Brian Thomas Jr. in a better situation. You could just actually get that player.
You could just draft Brian Thomas Jr.
You could just draft him, or you could draft Christian Watson, who is, like that same type of upside, but in an offense that I'm questioning a lot less. Or Alec Pierce, if you feel like he's healthy and ready to go, and he's the surefire number one. I actually think that this archetype of player, where I guess Brian Thomas Jr. is very much not the surefire number one, but Watson and Pierce are. You can get those guys like relatively cheap when they're in offenses that have at least proven to be effective at one point, albeit with the Colts offense raising an eyebrow. With Tate, he's really, really like, it's a completely unproven offense is what I'm trying to say. Now I understand because Tate is a rookie, there is a level of like, it could be anything. We don't know exactly what's going to go. Like, we don't know if he's going to be that like confined to just being a deep threat. Yeah. I don't really think he will be entirely, but any level of like full route tree dominant wide receiver upside that Tate does have is outweighed by him being like the only major receiving threat here. So him seeing a lot of attention on an offense that I just don't trust at all. That's my problem with Tate. Maybe he should be more around the 35 range, but at 30, it's too rich above Tyson.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you like any of the
I have
other
Tyson at 30
more?
I love Tyson. I mean, I think Tyson is a spectacular talent. He's a huge injury risk, I know, but at this price, I feel like it's been taken into account and then some. Tyson is an unbelievable route runner. He can do everything. He is big physical. Well, the physicality can be touch and go, but he's got it within him. The numbers for him in college were phenomenal. I like the offense. They pass a lot. I don't know. The schedule's easy. They should be killing teams, hopefully. I don't know.
I've got Tyson at 31 on my rankings. I've got Lemon at 37, and I've got Tate at 39 is where I ended. I just think Tyson and Lemon are better separators than Tate are in potentially better offenses. I mean, the Saints, I think they still have a lot to prove, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of sticking to where my big board was. I ended up a little bit lower on Tate with some of the overall speed and separation questions, and I just don't feel like I need to be, first in line to like draft him in the Tennessee offense. But he is very silky, and he is very good in contested catch situations. Blaiden, at one point you compared him to T. Higgins. I don't hate that. But there's just some other names I'd throw out there, like Jordan Addison. Like, if this is a better situation for Justin Jefferson, think about Jordan Addison as well, who scored double-digit touchdowns before the lean years of last year, right? 2 10-touchdown years in a row. And then last year he was at 4. Now he's kind of going into this contract prove it situation. I don't think their tight end room is great. I don't think that their wide receiver 3 situation is, I guess Juwan Jennings, you could do worse. But like someone like that, I think is a little bit more proven and maybe a bit of a better situation than someone like Tate is, but is getting drafted later. Someone even like Quentin Johnston, kind of as I keep going on my like deep threat, people feel like they're constrained within a role, guys. Like, he scored 8 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. His yards a game have gone from 25 to 47 to 52 over the years. So is he somebody that's kind of written off as a bust, even though he's kind of still improving? He's somebody that I kind of got in the similar range as Carnell Tate. And who's there competing with targets with him? It's not a very strong room. He's improving, and Justin Herbert is his quarterback with the tackles back with Mike McDaniel. Like, I might like his situation a little bit more, and he's kind of a similar guy, I think.
I just don't like Johnston the player as much as I like Tate the player, and I think Tate probably has I think if we're comparing those two as players, Tate is like way better at the catch point, and he also has like if they're starting, like even if they were starting at the same level, like Tate has way more, I think, upside to grow. And so I think
like Tate's a better player too. And I guess this is me weighting situation heavily, but the gap in situation is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. Coming out of the top, out of the top 30, Brian Thomas Jr., who we've already talked about, is 31. Marv is 32.
That's about right.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I got him at 40 though, so. But okay. I could get talked into putting him a little higher. I don't think Marv is like done. I know the training camp clips have been drops and lowlights, but people like piling on in these training camp settings. Like,
well, people are piling on, but they're just reposting the same clips, right? There's like 4 or 5 clips that keep going around.
And half the time you don't know what's going on. And like, seriously, with some of these Marv drops, like, you don't like to see him at all. And he's struggled with them. But
yeah.
Like, some of them are bad throws from the trainer. Like, it's like, oh, that wasn't the greatest throw I've ever seen. And then it gets posted everywhere on social media. Like, oh, if you still believe in Marv, you're a fucking idiot. Look at this. He's so bad. Like, and maybe he is, but I still think that he is in a holding pattern, right? Where, like, we do think that he separates pretty well for someone his size. He was the 4th overall pick in the draft. And I think those things are still true. I still think he does separate pretty well for his size. And if he can get his hands together, like, he's probably pretty dangerous. But yeah, I mean, in training camp, it doesn't look like he's had his hands together. That's for sure. But once the bullets start flying and things turn on in the regular season? Like, could there be a game where he starts to figure it out? I mean, Christian Watson, his hands have gotten better over the years. Devonta Adams is always the thing that you turn to. Marv runs the full route tree. I think we'll see about the hands. They scare me, but man, if he's in the 30s, if he's in the 40s, like, yeah, just because you've gotten burned at him in the past doesn't mean he's forever destined to be like horrific.
I certainly agree. I'm torn on Marv. I think he's one of the tougher evaluations in fantasy football this year. On the one hand, I agree completely about the separation stuff. On the other hand, it's not just the catches and the drops. It's working over the middle of the field. There's a lot of talk about him getting like easy button looks or whatever, or just scheming up quick stuff for him. But because he's not a very dynamic player after the catch, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to just like give him the quick get the ball in his hands plays.
Right.
And that's a limiting factor, not only if you're trying to get Marv back on track, but it's a limiting factor even if Marv was really good. The fact that you just don't really give him that type of workload. The offense, again, if the passing volume decreases like it could, Marv could be better, but it not really translate to him being a crazy fantasy player because they're just not throwing enough, and there's enough other guys in that room where his target share can't get up to like 35%. For all of those reasons, I'm a little worried about him, but he is still a very talented player. And I do think when we get into this range, I'm betting on talent and guys with severe issues anyway. Plus, as I was thinking about this driving in the car today, I went to go park and I saw a Cardinal on top of somebody's car. And I said,
Wow.
That has got to be a good omen. And if anybody needs good omens this year, it's Marv. It really is. Among all players in the NFL, he needs to have good energy put towards him. So I'm pulling for him. I really hope that it doesn't turn out that he just gets like the yips or whatever, just has like mental issues that screw up his career, because he really is still a great receiver. You can see it in him. Yeah. And like the catching and the body control was a strength coming out of college. That's what's frustrating about it. He had his concentration drops, but it's not like he can't track the ball or whatever. He's just dropping it. He just won't stop dropping it. So we'll see.
It's entirely in his head, I think. I don't know about you guys. I will be taking a moment of silence before week 1 and sending all of my positive energy to Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Parker Washington at 33, DK Metcalf at 34, and then Alec Pierce at 35. DK, I'm with you, Matt. I don't like him a lot either.
My issue with DK, look, I understand when you get to this part of the draft, a lot of these dudes don't have crazy upside, but some of them do. Like, at least with Alec Pierce, you're like, well, what if they give him 120 targets because they just paid him all this money, and that the offense doesn't fall apart, and that he becomes more well-rounded? Brian Thomas Jr. obviously has crazy upside. Marv, I have my issues with the offense, and there's a lot of dudes there, but he was a super high draft pick. There's a world where he figures it out and hits on the talent and is crazy, or even Parker Washington, right? With DK Metcalf, I mean, you really know what you're getting, and what you're getting is a low-end flex play who's a little hot cold, who's kind of limited as a route runner on an offense on a team that is limited by the passing offense, that is limited by Aaron Rodgers. Just don't love it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
It's all
Go ahead.
It's all true, and when it's all said and done, he's gonna be higher than wide receiver 34.
Sure. Like, there's no ceiling there. It's just he's gonna be wide receiver 28 or whatever. Like I don't know. I don't remember where he finished last year, and I don't have it pulled up right now. But I'm like, that is probably the ceiling of where he will finish. Like I just don't have
20.
high expect 20. Yeah.
And that was with getting suspended for punching a fan or pulling a fan down, I'd say. Which was a bit of a silly suspension, one might say, and he has a tendency to maybe
I'm underestimating him in non-PPR stuff. I don't know. I guess he is more of a low-end wide receiver too. I know the year before he was more of a wide receiver.
And you're not thinking about the Aller the Aller lip.
I'm not thinking about that. You're right. But I just think the upside is a little lacking. But I guess here we're at 35. That's not so bad. That's fine.
Yeah.
No,
Just know he's a high floor.
the
low
upside
ceiling
with Parker
type of option.
Washington isn't really that he like pops off for 1,500. Like,
Not that he pops off for 1,500. I don't know, actually.
man,
Make it 1,800.
I don't know. I
Make it a grillion.
a grillion.
Alec Pierce was 35, Jordan Tyson 36, which I think is
Tyson
fine.
should be higher.
I think Tyson's fine placement. Like,
He's
I think
so
the
nice.
injury stuff is baked in, and maybe the passing attack will probably be good though. So
The thing with Tyson is that what is not baked in is just how good he is. That's what's not baked in.
He is
I'm
nice.
serious. The
nice.
talent is being underrated. And it's partly because he did not actually go as wide receiver 1 in the draft. So people are like, okay, the wide receiver 2 in the draft on the Saints as the wide receiver 2. I think that's the mindset here. Personally, I just believe that Tyson is more talented than the average player of his draft position. Although the average player drafted in the top 10 of the receivers are usually really good anyway. But I'm in on the talent and I'm in on the Saints offense, so I'm a little higher on him.
I think that's fair. After him, Godwin is at 37, Sutton is at 38, Johnson is at 39, and then Lemon is at 40. I'll say Lemon.
Who is Johnson?
Quentin Johnston.
Oh yeah, Johnson. Okay, yeah.
Lemon I like at 40. I have him at 39, but I do think he is a really, really good route runner. He has great hands through contact. Like, I don't think there was anything fake about his production in college. The only concern that I have is this an optimal situation to go in and produce year one as a
It's
rookie?
not. It's more than a concern. It's really a huge
Smith at
limiting
10.
factor.
Well, because Smith is goated, and he's gonna Smith is
Lemon is
goated,
goated
and Lemon
to
is
you.
goated. Smith is goated, and he's going to be the wide receiver 1. Like, I do think it's gonna be pretty cut and dry.
Okay, you mean the wide receiver 1 and the Eagles?
On the Eagles, not wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy football. No.
Well, if you think it's going to be cut and dry, I mean, there's only so many targets to go around. But I don't know. I guess.
But there's also Goddard there, and they're going to give the ball to Saquon a lot. And I do think they're going to find ways to use Stowers, either as a tight end. I don't know if he's a good enough blocker for them to have him in line.
I know if he's a good enough blocker to hang on. If he looks like he did at Vanderbilt, he really is not. He's a big slot.
He's not. No, he's a big slot, and I could see them using him outside. I think he's probably a good piece to have out there. But like overall, I just look at him like there are a lot of people in this offense, and maybe Lemon does end up being like the second guy in the pecking order, but maybe he ends up being the third or the fourth. So.
I feel pretty strongly that Lemon's going to be the number 2, I have to say. And while I have a lot of concerns about the Eagles offense, I also don't think that all of the outcomes are negative. So when I'm looking at Devontae Smith as the 10th receiver, I might say, well, this and this. When I'm looking at Lemon as receiver 40, I agree. I think he's super talented. Yeah. And that's a big enough discount for, even in this situation, me to want to take a shot on him.
Yeah, I mean, this is being drafted in the middle of the 9th. That's pretty good value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the nice thing about Lemon is he just didn't drop the ball. Like he does not drop the ball. He catches.
He's
everything.
a demon. He really is.
He's
so
very
good.
physical. I think he's a more physical route runner than Golden was coming out, which I think was sort of his bugaboo. Was kind of keeping routes jagged and keeping contact off of them to get undercut, and just kind of knowing the playbook as a rookie too. Like all those things kind of kept him buried. Lemon, I think, is going to be better than that, even though they're drafted in the same place, kind of a similar build. I wonder if there's Actually, they probably have nothing to do with one another. But Lemon was a much more productive guy in college.
I really like the idea of like comparing every player to dudes on your team. Like, yeah, I think he's more physical than Golden. He's a lot healthier than Christian Watson. Yeah, that's a good player.
You act
But
like
I know what you mean. I know where you're coming from. Because with Golden, it's like he was a highly drafted rookie that didn't pan out around the same draft range. So it's like, okay, why did that happen, and why won't that happen to Lemon? I know, but I like the idea of only doing it because
I'm just comparing one NFC superpower to the other. That's all I'm doing.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Yes, of course. Just like I could compare them to the Browns and say I'm comparing an NFC superpower to an AFC superpower.
Well, that would be crazy, right? I'm saying things that make sense.
Yeah. And then Godwin, Sutton, and Quentin Johnston. Those guys are all kind of a mess to me. Sutton is probably the guy that I'm the most interested in, just because I think he's probably the best receiver still at this point. But him and Godwin have injury concerns, and Godwin's been taking a step back. And Johnson, I feel like, is who he is, even though he has been getting better, I guess.
I think he's in a much better situation this year. I could see where he's the one who wins out. I agree with Theo. Godwin seems like he's still a good player, but he's been really horribly injured.
Yeah.
And his efficiency numbers have kind of tailed off, although maybe he's been playing hurt. So I'm not like in love with him. And then Sutton, he's getting older. It's tough with them bringing Waddle in, but maybe the work that he gets doesn't overlap as much with the work that Waddle's going to get, and that those sideline shots are still going to be there for him.
Right.
Yeah. Godwin's kind of interesting just because he kind of heated up last year a little bit and then got hurt again. And 2024, he was actually very efficient, but then that got cut short. So, like, is Godwin kind of sneaky useful in a room that just lost Mike Evans and has a bunch of young players? Like, I kind of thought about that, but then I watched the tape and I just didn't really think he was the same player that he used to be in early in 2025. I know he had a good game at the end, but the hands were not where I expect them to be for Chris Godwin. And it just scares me to see someone older like that getting banged up like that. And then you turn on the tape and your impression is like, I just don't think he's as dynamic as he used to be. Those are the kinds of things that's like, maybe you just leave this alone instead of trying to squeeze the orange for the orange juice here. I think I'd rather take like Marv or Carnell Tate or Lemon or,
I have all three of these guys outside of my top 40, Godwin, Sutton, and Johnston. It's just guys that I'm not super high on at this range. But
Johnston is going to be the next deep threat that gets an extension everybody hates. It's going to be Pierce and then Watson, and then Johnston's going to be next.
Except Pierce and Watson are good. It's the difference.
Johnston's gotten a little better. He used to be horrible, so maybe that doesn't mean much. Maybe he's the Brian Brzee of wide receivers, where it's like he was horrible and now he's okay, and that doesn't matter as much as I think it does.
Exactly. Yeah.
He has not been offensively bad to me in a minute.
I guess that's fair. But I think that wraps things up for another episode of Stay Hot. Thank you all so much for tuning in as we go over the 40 receivers in ADP for fantasy football. A lot of guys to talk about, but we're going to continue our preview of the divisions in the NFL with the AFC South next episode, so make sure you tune in for that. And until then, we will catch you on the flippity flop.